Chapter 900. After Monkey King finished explaining to him, he heard Chinong call out to him. He left Zhu Deheo to ponder on his own matters and went to see Chinong. On the Deer Terrace Pavilion, snow fell on the ground like silver fragments. In the pure white world, countless mandala flowers bloomed in 7 colors, appearing exceptionally enchanting and even a little demonic. Chinong stood in the snow. When he saw Monkey King return, he let him sit beside him and said, "Monkey King, ever since you started learning from me, you've been diligent every day. Now, you've made some progress. I'm very pleased. Now, you can see through the falseness of the so-called wisdom of wisdom and understand that science is the only way to truly explore the great Tao. That's very good. Science is not something that exists in a concrete manner. It is a worldview, a methodology. It recognizes all objective realities and summarizes and recognizes laws from the observation and understanding of the objective world. Or rather, science is a kind of objective law. It is a law that is summarized in the process of consciousness understanding objective laws. Therefore, we cannot mythologize science. That's because the science that we understand has limitations and is all relative. Fellow Taoist Sakyamuni passed down the Sanskrit Dharma. In order to prevent his own understanding from hindering the correct understanding of future generations, he simplified all the theories and left behind 3 seals to verify the correct Dharma. I also learned from him and forcefully described the 2 seals of science to verify the correct Dharma, that is, understanding and practice. There are many ways to understand the world, such as learning. However, any understanding has to be verified through practice. This cannot guarantee that you will always be on the right path, because the objective world ultimately has objective limitations. Monkey King, I once had an experiment that attempted to prove that under a certain level of information manipulation, the person being manipulated would never be able to understand the true objective world. This law is known by me as the law of information dimensionality reduction. The amount of information that reduces the dimension of an object is a constant that is constantly changing according to the cognitive ability of the object. This common sense is the constant of the information dimensionality reduction of an object, also known as the natural mode of information. However, I have another theory. It's a theory of falsifying the law of information dimensionality reduction. That is, a cognitive object can give birth to variables that surpass the natural mode of information. In other words, intelligent creatures can give birth to miracles that surpass my cognition. In the calculation of it, it will never be a constant, but a variable. This makes all dimensional barriers to intelligence and cognitive objects not absolutely valid. That is, the theory of raising dimensions of variables. In order to verify this falsified theory and overturn the information dimensionality reduction law, one of my original cells designed a series of experiments to gather the variables of cognitive objects in the form of civilization, to integrate and amplify those variables. Monkey King asked curiously, "Master, did you succeed?" Chinong smiled faintly and said, "We've gone off topic. Monkey King, today I will teach you the practice seal. Practice is a method by which cognition acts on the objective world and then acts on cognition. In scientific research, it is called experiment. When I teach you to seek the great Tao, cognition and practice are the 2 legs. I have concluded that the most effective methods of cognition and practice are learning and experimentation. Monkey King, you must love learning and experiment. At all times, don't forget to learn and experiment. For example, this time, I set up an experiment. The so-called duel is just a small matter. It's not as important as the experiment. The most important thing in an experiment is the experiment plan." Chinong smiled and said, "Goku, your homework this time is to formulate your own experimental plan according to Master's experimental plan, complete the experiment, and make a summary report of the experiment. Give it to me." Monkey King received an experiment plan from Chinong. Itsu Kingdom Large Human Experiment. Using psychotropic drugs to stimulate research on the 2 forces of Buddhism and vows. Summary of the experiment plan. This experiment is divided into 9 parts, including the analysis of the effects of psychotropic drugs on the people of Itsu Kingdom, the research on the fundamental mana system of Buddhism, the construction of the nine consciousness system of Buddhism, the analysis of the interference of telekinesis on dark matter, the research on the principle of vows. The purpose of this experiment is to use Buddhism as a sample to study the effects of a human mind on the material world. The experiment design is as follows. Chunong explained, "The experiment that I designed is based on my deep understanding of Buddhism. Buddhism has 6 senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. According to my research, the other 5 senses and the 5 represented senses, color, sound, smell, taste, and touch, are only the sensory functions of the human organs. The 6th sense, consciousness, represents the activity of consciousness and is the root of Buddhism's supernatural power. I guess that the so-called consciousness also corresponds to a sensory organ of the human body that is separated from the level of organs. It is very likely to be related to the activity of the brain, the organ of thinking. It could be a quantum sense or another sensory organ function represented by the brain. To study consciousness, one must come into contact with the activity of consciousness. And the most basic representation of the activity of consciousness, the representation that is separated from the interference of the other 5 senses, is a dream. Dreams are the activity of human consciousness. The method that Buddhism uses to come into contact with the activity of consciousness is a kind of spiritual activity that simulates dreams, meditation. According to the Grand Unified Information Theory, all objective worlds are made up of information. All objective phenomena are manipulated by information. The way we come into contact with the objective world is through our senses. With sight, there is color. With touch, there is mass. With shape, space. With hearing, there is wave. With taste, there is smell. The concept and definition of all objective substances originate from the way we understand the world, the summary of the senses. Therefore, the 6th sense represented by consciousness may be able to observe a deeper world. Monkey King, you should know that ever since you cultivated the quantum primordial spirit, the world that you see and the world that you observe with your 5 senses are very different. The world that ordinary people can see is just a drop in the ocean compared to yours. The part of the world that they can't see or perceive can be called the dark world. For most people whose consciousness and senses are suppressed, the world that their consciousness can perceive is also the dark world. If one can develop consciousness and come into contact with the senses of consciousness and see that part of the dark world, it will be possible to influence dark matter and dark energy and do things that ordinary people can't do. This method is called divine power. I already know what the divine power that develops consciousness is. It is the self-power that Buddhism talks about, psychokinesis. And the interference of other people's consciousness is other force, vow. The force that consciousness affects the objective world is what Buddhism talks about as the 2 forces of other force, psychokinesis and vow. The divine power of Buddhism is based on the psychokinesis and vow that are cultivated through the senses of consciousness. Consciousness is not the end of this kind of cognition, but a starting point. The mighty people of Buddhism have already walked the path after that. After the eyes, ears, nose, color, body, and mind are the Atana consciousness, the Araya consciousness, and the Amora consciousness. At my level, there are many things that can be understood without words. But we must not think that this kind of knowledge that is based on our wisdom and experience is completely objective. If we don't put it into practice, then this kind of cognition can never be verified and improved. Therefore, even if I know what the 9 senses are, I still have to experiment. The experiment plan this time is to use the Dachira flower, a psychotropic drug that can affect consciousness, as a tool to analyze and develop consciousness and the other 3 senses. Monkey King thought for a long time and asked Chenong, "Master, then the next step of the experiment plan is to develop an experimental tool that can understand and control consciousness." He flipped through the outline of the experiment plan that Chenong wrote and complained, "Master, you can't be asking me to develop this tool, right? It also emphasizes that this tool must be self-sufficient and cannot be made with the help of all kinds of supernatural means and tools. I can't understand it. Chun Ong laughed and scolded. You shameless monkey, you are really lazy. You are asking for a beating. The various meditation techniques of Buddhism can develop consciousness. What's so difficult about coming up with your own set of techniques based on them? Monkey King shook his head and said, Master, don't think that I can't see it. The meditation techniques of Buddhism require one to visualize the Dharma bodies of Buddha and Bodhisattva and borrow the power of those powerful Buddhists. Only then can one take the most difficult step. After that, one still needs to use ascetic practices to stimulate the body, the three secrets of body, mouth, and mind, and the power of will to cultivate. It is extremely difficult for me to develop a method that doesn't require the help of Buddhism. Chun Ong stretched out his hand and plucked a datura flower from the ground and smiled. Monkey King suddenly understood and said, Master, are you saying that I should take medicine to cultivate? This datura flower can cause one to sink into all kinds of illusions and distort the five senses. It is a spiritual medicine that can amplify one's consciousness. However, the greatest taboo in cultivating one's consciousness is to mix reality with illusion. When one's consciousness is cultivated, there will be no concept at all, and one will be controlled by the five senses. The information captured by the consciousness will turn into all kinds of strange illusions. If one can't break through it, one will sink into the illusion and not be able to see the truth. Therefore, although the six senses are treasures of humans, when it comes to understanding the higher levels of the senses, they are the six thieves. Only those with great wisdom and perseverance can see through the devil and see the truth. Now, with the illusionary smoke of 1,000 transformations and distorting the six senses, it can amplify one's consciousness and achieve the effect of a profound meditation technique. However, it will also distort all the information of the senses. Even the five senses that are commonly used will be in chaos, not to mention the more subtle consciousness. Chun Ong smiled and said, This is my test for you. Do you still expect me to answer it? With a crying face, Wukong begged for mercy. Patriarch, this datura flower, even a normal person would feel ecstasy after eating it. They would be half crazy, but not crazy. Not to mention such an extremely dangerous thing like consciousness cultivation. Meditation, and visualization techniques are extremely weak at the beginning. Even if someone yells at the side, they might suffer from qigong deviation. How can they withstand the ravages of such a wolf and tiger medicine? Chun Ong scolded. Don't try to cheat me of the answer. This is your own homework. The reference answer is omitted. The only hint is that since this wolf and tiger medicine is so dangerous, how did the shaman puppet of each Chu country use it to concoct medicine? Go and find the answer yourself. If you still haven't come up with the experiment plan after the first battle, I will punish you. After saying that, Chun Ong took out a monkey demon from the bronze chariot under his buttocks and threw it to Wukong, saying, Now, the righteous canal country is the place where I and Mahastemaprapta Bodhisattva fight. The people here are demons and are all materials for fighting, so it's not good for you to personally intervene. This is an experiment on how to use the datura flower to create a tool to control consciousness. You can use this monkey to do the experiment. Then, he chased Monkey King away and ignored him. Monkey King held the monkey demon and thought hard, but he still couldn't figure it out. So he asked the monkey demon, What kind of monkey are you? Why do you look so weird? Do you have a name? The weird monkey demon answered pitifully, I'm a baboon demon from a Paragodania state, so I don't look like a macaque. I have a secular name, Zhou Bofu. I heard from the immortal that my name isn't good and offended him, so I have to suffer all kinds of torture. Monkey King was amused. My ancestor is very vengeful. I don't know how your name offended him. Suddenly, Chun Ang's voice sounded in Monkey King's ears. Don't listen to that baboon's nonsense. His clan doesn't have any relationship with you. Do you know that baboons eat monkeys? Eat monkeys. Monkey King's expression changed. He looked at Zhou Bofu and sneered. I think you're very dishonest. Your eyes, huh? There's a sense of evil in them. Chapter 901. Great sage, I feel that the top of my head is cold, and the mountain wind is making my head hurt. Can you put on a hat to cover me? Baboon demon Zhou Bofu stood trembling in the night wind as he pleaded with Wukong. Stop talking nonsense. What hat do you want? Monkey King bared his teeth and said, You are a rough guy, not a little girl. What's wrong with you being blown by the wind? Monkey King used a strand of his hair to deal with the Ichu Kingdom's affairs while he created a cave to research on the Dachira flower, faith, and wish energy. As an experimental subject, Zhou Bofu didn't have any monkey rights. He watched as Monkey King concocted the extracts of the Dachira flower, from the traditional method of drying it to the more advanced method of oil extraction, microwave extraction, enzyme extraction, supercritical fluid extraction, and so on. Monkey King used more than a dozen physical and chemical extraction methods. He even used some free time to concoct more than a dozen types of pills using the Dachira flower as the main ingredient. In addition to these scientific, metaphysical, and even alchemy and pill refining methods, according to the finished product, it was also divided into different categories, such as Dachira extracting alkaloid organic macromolecules, Dachira synthesizing chemical compounds, Dachira pills, Dachira potions, Dachira mutative vitality gas state, and so on. As a new experimental ape, Monkey King couldn't help but be rough with his hands and feet. Zhou Bofu's eyes were filled with tears, and he was terrified. Monkey King, the wind is really making my head cold. Baboon monster, Zhou Bofu emphasized. Monkey King didn't even turn his head to look at Zhou Bofu, and he sneered. You are so long-winded. You're just a monster with coarse skin and flesh, and you want to win my sympathy? Be good and stay there, or I will let you experience my methods. If teacher wants you to suffer, I will not be short of one. I will let you taste a few more. Zhou Bofu's tone was sincere, but there was a hint of desolation in his voice. Great sage lord, I'm a coarse demon, but when you open my skull like this and expose my white brain to the outside, it's really cold when the wind blows in. It's like the melting ice and snow in the mountains splashing down from the top of the skull. The bone-chilling coldness that can't be dispelled is seeping into the brain. Upon hearing this, Wukong turned his head and saw that Zhou Bofu's head, which was as big as a dustpan, had been neatly cut open from the temple. The entire top of his skull had disappeared without a trace, leaving only a basin-sized pink and trembling brain exposed, swaying slightly in the wind. The Monkey King licked the two canine teeth on his upper jaw and revealed a ferocious smile. But at this time, Zhou Bofu had already calmed down. He took a deep puff of the mandala cigarette at the corner of his mouth. He inhaled so hard that his brain deflated a little. Feeling the smoke spreading through his body, the original emotions of fear, and shock were slowly extracted. The whole world became blurry, and his spirit entered a peaceful and tranquil state. Great sage lord, there's no need to trouble yourself. I feel very good now. Maybe this is the enlightenment that the Buddhists often talk about. Zhou Bofu slowly puffed out smoke rings. His expression was almost frozen. It was as if the smoke wasn't puffed out from his mouth, but drifted out on its own. He had a look of relief on his face as he sighed. Monkey King, have you played with a female monkey before? The Monkey King took out a two-dimensional high-frequency laser knife and came to his back. He carefully cut into Zhou Bofu's brain. In a section of Zhou Bofu's brain, the interaction between the neurons was undergoing a miraculous change. All the data was being processed in the quantum primordial spirit. The data of the brain from different angles, including the quantum layer, the cellular layer, the atomic layer, the neuroelectric layer, and even the electromagnetic waves of the brain, gradually constructed a model of Zhou Bofu's brain. The series of changes that were happening in his brain could be seen. In order to obtain more data, the Monkey King gave a perfunctory answer. I was born with the body of a stone monkey. I don't have those mortal roots. I'm free and unfettered. If you haven't had it, how would you know what freedom is? Zhou Bofu sighed. I still remember the time when I was still a baboon in the Aparagodania state. At that time, I felt that it was the best life for a baboon to have a female baboon. After I became a demon, the goddesses of the Aparagodania state only needed one tail of silver to give to me once. It really emptied my pockets, exhausted my spirit, and weakened my cultivation. The Monkey King pondered and said, "This neuroelectric signal is a little interesting. However, to obtain more data, I still need to change the external stimulation. Sometimes, when I ran out of money, the goddesses wouldn't be angry. They would only ask me to perform an ant kneeling at the entrance of the temple for the guests to see. When I had enough money, I would be able to return the money. Sometimes I would even have enough money to give to another goddess." Zhou Bofu said faintly. After that, the number of times I had to kneel at the ants increased. A few familiar guests, such as a crippled frog demon, would come up with some nonsense to mock me. Let's do some reversible research first. The Monkey King sighed. I'm still a newbie in the field of consciousness. I'm not very familiar with it. Master only gave me this material. I guess it's also a test. If I break it early, the results will definitely not be ideal. To be on the safe side, it's best to make it more durable. Wukong carefully cut off a part of Zhou Bofu's telencephalon, and the pink brain tissue was sent to the biological warehouse for cultivation. Wukong modified this part of the tissue according to the structure of the biological computer in his memory, the protein neural smart chip. The light pink brain tissue was disseminated into a light silver protein structure. Although Wukong's quantum light brain primordial spirit was a quantum computer that was at least 8 generations older than this protein neural smart chip, it was still compatible with the underlying data of such a backward model. Therefore, if Wukong wanted to input any data into this neural smart chip, it was really easy. It was even equivalent to Wukong's primordial spirit, separating a trivial bit of data and controlling this part of Zhou Bofu's brain from a level deeper than his consciousness. After transplanting that part of the telencephalon back into Zhou Bofu's brain, the Monkey King could finally directly monitor Zhou Bofu's consciousness and brain activity. So this guy's consciousness is only a small part of his brain activity. The Monkey King cut open Zhou Bofu's chest and checked Zhou Bofu's internal organs through the T-shaped incision. Master has written that the part of the organ function, the consciousness of the cell activity, and the part that controls most of the physiological activities of his body should be the subconscious. So how does the subconscious work? Goku subconsciously wanted to pluck a certain organ from Bofu, but he immediately came back to his senses and thought to himself, "These 5 viscera and 6 bowels also have a consciousness function, but I don't know the principle of its consciousness activity." In Master's experimental records, there are only biological computers that imitate the principle of the brain's consciousness and neural computers that imitate the consciousness of the spine. There's no information about the liver computer or the kidney. Chapter 902. The king of Yitu naturally didn't know that Chun Ong and Wukong had been missing for a while. He didn't even know that the one dealing with him at the banquet had become a hair clone of Wukong, and his main body had been ordered by his master to torture the baboon demon to dissect it and experiment on it, causing Zhou Bofu to lose his mind and was about to go crazy. When the Yitu king saw that Chun Ong was present, he quickly put on a warm smile and called his subordinate to bring a 14-15-year-old boy. Holding his hand, he came in front of Chun Ong. The Yitu king lowered his stance and took the initiative to say a few words before asking, "This little king has a presumptuous request that I ask the immortal elder to consider. My son has been mischievous since he was young, but I like him a lot. He admires the immortal path, and seeing the immortal elder's magical powers today, he wants to become an immortal elder's disciple and learn some skills. This little king is presumptuous. I ask the immortal elder not to blame me." I wouldn't dare. Chun Ong smiled as he looked at the youth. For some unknown reason, when the Yitu king saw Chun Ang's eyes, he felt a chill run down his back, feeling like he had tricked someone. That youth was wearing embroidered clothes and looked very arrogant. But Chun Ong really liked this kind of arrogant person with his nose in the sky. It wasn't that he had the masochistic hobby of a senior expert from an ancient fantasy novel and liked to beg for a disciple to worship. That youth was not the main character of a third-rate fantasy novel, and his name was just a normal warhound's name. He was not called Long Out Yen, Yi Xingfeng, Sword Death, or Lung Yi. It was just when Chunong had finished making an experiment plan and his desire for research was high, he could see this kind of talent. It was truly a natural beauty. Chunong was just sighing that although Yuan Tong looked like he had the potential to be a lab rat, he still had a relationship with him. Although Chunong had experimented with his disciples many times, there were not just one or two crazy people under him. But those were experiments with small side effects. For experiments like feeding drugs to his disciples, Chunong was more willing to catch wild lab rats. With a thought, someone took the initiative to send him materials. In order to avoid Chan Ang's guilt, which did not exist, he even arranged for a person with his nose in the sky and an arrogant attitude. This was a match made in heaven. Although Chunong never cared about things like compassion and kindness, he still happily accepted this kind of arrangement. The young man was called Chi Lei, and he was the sixth son of the king of Yichu. The current division leader of Yuji was his uncle. Among the 6 divisions of Yichu, 4 of them supported the rebels who had usurped the throne. The only 2 that supported the king of Yichu were the Yuji division. Therefore, he was the favorite of the king of Yichu. However, it was hard to say how much of it was because of his uncle or how much of it was because of family. Chunong thought for a while and still tried to shirk the responsibility. The 4 of us, master and disciples, have been traveling to the west to learn and learn. We really cannot stay in this Yichu country for long. Sooner or later, we'll have to go to the west. The relationship between the king and your son, blood, is thicker than water. When the time comes, wouldn't we be separating the 2 of you? And looking at 6 Prince's outstanding talent, you look like you have a master. If you follow a poor scholar like me to learn, who knows how long it will take, won't you lose all hope of inheriting the throne in the future? Hearing the words, inheriting the throne, the youth's expression changed. He did not think that following a deity to a dangerous place like the Fong Rong division was more important than inheriting the Yichu country's orthodoxy. Originally, he was still afraid of Chun Ang's supernatural powers and spells, so he suppressed his expression, but now he could not bear it anymore. The youth raised his head and pointed his nostrils at Chunong. Who are you? What ability do you have to be my teacher? Without waiting for the Yichu king to stop him, this fellow sneered, how can a mere illusion to control plants be more powerful than the sorcerer's spells? The sorcerers in my tribe can summon ghosts and gods, practice witchcraft, can behead without dying, and kill people with flying heads. They can control plagues and easily massacre a large tribe of thousands, causing those powerful warriors to die from pus and ulceration, screaming for 7 days and 7 nights. Even they don't dare to say that they will take me as their disciple. What ability do you have to dare to say such big words? Just based on these few illusions of yours? 6th Prince Chi Lei pointed at the mandala flowers that were blooming all over Deer Terrace Pavilion, and with a face full of disdain he shouted, show me a few spells first. If you are really that powerful, give me 3 conditions, and I will take you as my teacher. Chunong sighed in his heart. Although he had already tried his best to look down on the intelligence of those idiots, only now did he realize that he had still underestimated their stupidity. But he only smiled, and before the Yichu king could panic, he said, I also don't have any ability to take the 6th prince as my disciple. Monkey King, come here. Monkey King was already watching from the side, and when he heard Chinang's order, he immediately jumped out and said, Teacher, if you have any orders, feel free to order me. The 6th prince wants to test our spells. Show him a few spells, and if the 6th prince thinks highly of us, then we will have a noble person to support us. Chunong said lightly. Monkey King scratched his right cheek and said, Teacher, are you taking in a disciple, or are you inviting a master? When I was taking you as my teacher, I didn't dare to say that. Chunong smiled. How would I dare to take the 6th prince as my disciple? I only want to impart some interesting spells to the 6th prince to relieve his boredom. When Wukong heard the song, he understood and said with a smile, Master, your swindling has been exposed. right? We don't have any spells. They're all little tricks, such as paper dolls, paper horses, bewitching drugs, and so on. Let me show you one. After that, he took out a piece of yellow paper, cut a human figure, and blew on it. The yellow paper doll grew 1 foot taller, and Monkey King pretended to be sweating profusely and blew on it 7 times in a row. Finally, the paper doll grew to the size of a normal person, and he secretly asked Chun-Ong, "Teacher, what spells do you show him?" Chun-Ong said calmly, "This child belongs to his uncle, and it's the first month now. I think it's time for him to get a haircut." "No problem, no problem." Monkey King laughed, and he asked the sixth prince, "Prince, do you have anyone you want to see? I'm going to capture his soul right now. Tell him to talk to the sixth prince." The sixth prince laughed coldly. "With your cultivation, you can capture a soul? Even the shamans can't do it. You must be trying to trick me with your illusions. If you have the ability, invite my uncle here. I want to talk to him." Monkey King looked like he was in a difficult position, and he stammered, "This. What does the prince's uncle look like? Does he have a personal keepsake? It's best if I can see him." The sixth prince was originally 60% suspicious, but he immediately became 100% suspicious, and he laughed coldly. "Who do you think he is? He isn't someone you can meet just because you want to. However, I do have a keepsake with me, in case you find an excuse to reject me." He then described his uncle's appearance. Half true, half false, but he still had some thoughts in his mind. Monkey King laughed in his heart, and a bit of his primordial spirit left his shell. Monkey King was stunned for a moment, and suddenly he trembled. He had captured the heaven soul and earth soul of the sixth prince's uncle from hell. He pointed at the yellow paper doll, and it was attached to it. However, there was only a clumsy scribble on the yellow paper doll's face, and it was the uncle that the sixth prince had described. The sixth prince saw that the yellow paper doll suddenly moved, and it looked around in a daze. When the sixth prince saw it, he seemed to be shocked and pointed at him, wanting to shout. However, the yellow paper doll had no mouth or tongue, and only the paper doll could be seen moving, but no sound could be heard. The sixth prince looked at it coldly for a moment, then suddenly pulled out his sword and cut the paper man in 2, chopping off the head. He scolded, "I deliberately said something wrong to catch you in the act, and let you know that my Jujio has a full beard, not a smear on his lips." Before he finished speaking, he heard the Itsu King's horrified cry. The sixth prince looked back and saw that the paper doll's head had turned into a bloody head. Looking at the full beard and the horrified expression, the sixth prince felt that it was familiar, and when he took a closer look, wasn't it his own uncle? The sixth prince's face instantly turned pale, and he dropped his sword. Looking down, he saw a smear of blood dripping down the blade. "Ah!" The sixth prince screamed in horror, and he didn't even realize that the sword in his hand had dropped. The Itsu King was even more terrified, and he looked at Chun-Ong and the Monkey King, extremely horrified. Chapter 903. The sixth prince still believed that this was an unintentional mistake by the Monkey King. But although the Itsu King was not a shrewd person, he had more experience than the Monkey King. How could he not know that Chun-Ong and Monkey King were trying to kill him with a borrowed knife? This was also because the Monkey King did not hide it. Otherwise, he was 100% sure that his uncle would die without knowing why. The Monkey King's decisiveness shocked the Itsu King. Although the head on the ground did not belong to the royal family, it belonged to a powerful aristocrat in the Itsu country. Otherwise, why would the Itsu King favor his useless sixth son? Such a big shot was easily killed by someone's scheme. And it was not because of power, nor was it because of political strife. It was not even because of the shadow that the Itsu King had hidden in his heart for a long time, being cursed and poisoned to death by those shamans. A powerful aristocrat had died because of a child's joke, although the one who killed him was not that child, but just because of a few words from an ignorant child, Chun-Ong and the rest killed a nobleman whose status was not lower than his. How could the Itsu King, who believed in power over everything, be afraid? The sixth prince was in disbelief. He looked at his uncle's head and looked expectantly at the Monkey King, hoping that he would say, "Prince, how's my spell? I was just joking with you. Your uncle is still alive. This is just an illusion." But the Monkey King was a ruthless person. He did not care about protecting the lives of ants. After learning from Chenong, he had a trace of indifference and mercy. My will is the will of the heavens. The mercy of the heavens. Was it to protect the lives of these living beings? From the heavens' point of view, operating the rules and supporting yin and yang was the mercy of the heavens. Therefore, the Monkey King could kill millions of people on a whim. It was not possible to massacre a city and destroy a country, but to kill a nobleman from the Etsu country. Wasn't that a simple matter? The sixth prince touched his uncle's head. Under his touch, there was still a trace of warmth. He retracted his hand as if he had touched charcoal. He screamed, "Illusion!" These were all illusions. How dare you, Magus of the Central Plains, try to deceive me with an illusory spell? Hurry up and undo this spell. Otherwise, I'll ask my father to execute you two evildoers. Chun-Ong could understand why he was in such a state of mind due to the intense mental stimulation. He smiled and said, "As expected, the prince saw through it. Monkey King, hurry up and remove the illusion spell. The prince is indeed talented and beautiful. I have a spell here to teach you. I hope the prince can forgive my stubborn disciple." The Monkey King didn't react to being scolded at all. He continued to smile and pointed at the head in the sixth prince's hand. The sixth prince saw the bloody head in his arms suddenly turn into a stone. He cried out in joy and threw the stone to the ground. That Etsu king had already adjusted himself. Seeing the opportunity, he clapped his hands and laughed. "Good spell, immortal master, good spell. This prince really can't tell it all." Chenong smiled and said, "I made a fool of myself in front of your majesty." The three of them complimented each other and said some trivial things. After the Etsu king said some good things, he found an excuse to leave. "This little king can't hold his liquor and will go rest for a while. Please forgive me, forgive me." After saying this, he didn't look at the sixth prince, who was extremely favored and was about to inherit the throne again. He turned and left. Just as the Etsu king walked far away, he summoned his trusted aide and said, "Hurry to Yuji tribe and tell that great Donghu Hei knew that division leader Yuji is dead. Tell him to quickly win over those nobles and fight for their support. In a while, this prince will make him division leader Yuji." Great Donghu Hei knew had always been at odds with division leader Yuji, but he was also a great noble in Yuji tribe. He was the second most powerful person in Yuji tribe who was close to the Etsu king. With his support, it was very likely that he would be able to obtain the position of tribal chief. Of course, if that was the case, then division leader Yuji's younger sister, the Etsu king's woman, would silently die from an illness. The Etsu king was still considering whether or not to use his son as a gift to fight for great Donghu Hei. But after careful consideration, division leader Yuji still had some loyal subordinates. In order to win over these people and to prevent losing the means to keep Hei-Nu in check, his sixth son couldn't die. Furthermore, those terrifying immortals of the Central Plains would probably use his son to do something. The sixth prince didn't see anything from his father's attitude. He could only say that people always liked to deceive themselves with wishful thinking and believe things that they were willing to believe. Therefore, no matter how stupid they acted, it was natural. This was one of the common characteristics of stupidity. Chi Lei was still arrogant, but after seeing the smiling expression on the Monkey King's face, he still felt a shadow in his heart. He restrained his arrogance and asked, "May I know what magic the two immortals want to teach me?" Chenong explained, "It's just a basic magic for visualization and a few applied unorthodox magic." The experiment that Chenong wanted to track and study was the relationship between the personality, the spirit, and the six senses of Buddhism. The preliminary requirement was to study the influence of the different personalities of schizophrenia on the visualization of consciousness, which was the so-called difference between two minds. Of course, what Chenong wanted to concoct was not 2 minds, but 7 minds and 8 minds. At the very least, he wanted to let him split into 8 or 10 personalities, or sum up a visualization method to promote the split personality. Combined with the stimulation of the psychotropic drug datura, Chenong had more or less figured out the method of splitting personality. It was a reverse stimulation method that combined Buddhism to subdue two minds and see through the truth and falsehood. Through the many illusions produced after taking the Dachira flower, it stimulated many delusions of reincarnation, nourished them, and strengthened them. Through the spiritual guidance hidden in the visualization diagram, including some voices and illusions that violated common sense, it stimulated the consciousness, causing people to split and produce several personalities. Then, through the directional cultivation and distortion of the personalities, it would produce fixed state changes. Of course, Prince Chi Lei would never know that these were his own personalities. For him, those personalities were the guidance of the immortals, the protectors, and the ghosts and gods under the endless sky and flowers. The core information of these personalities, besides coming from Chi Lei himself, also came from the endless Yin devils, secret devils, and sky devils in Chun Ang's ultimate happiness diagram. Somehow, they were connected with a trace of the ultimate happiness diagram, which made it convenient for Chenong to collect data and conduct modulation. All in all, it was to normalize, turn the split personalities into organs, and turn them into weapons. According to Chun Ang's research, the personality was the collection of the information of a person's consciousness, and consciousness was the general name of a person's sixth sense and the perception that it represented. The divine power of Buddhism came from the reaction of the sixth sense to the cognitive world, which was the part of the perceived dark world. This kind of reaction was the power of psyche for oneself and the power of hope for others. The method of using the power of psyche to change the material world was the divine power. As a collection of information of consciousness, the personality could be used as the information carrier for the development of the divine power of psyche. It was like a programmed weapon. By visualizing different information, such as protectors, Buddhas, strange beasts, celestial phenomena, and so on, the personality organs that could be used as weapons would be split, and the divine power of psyche would be produced. This was the essence of the so-called visualization technique. For Chenong, not to mention the fact that memories were not sacred, even the self was not sacred. The so-called enlightenment, the so-called epiphany, and seeing through the truth and falsehood were just a kind of information of consciousness that could be analyzed. There was no difference between sincerity and delusion, and there was no essential difference between the epiphany that came from one's nature and the information that was forcefully brainwashed. For Chenong, the enlightenment of ordinary cultivators was just the personality information that could be studied, repeated, and even industrialized. By studying the divine power of the Buddhas in Mount Lingshan, he could encrypt the information that mimicked the way they used their power of psyche into the images of those Buddhas, and ask the white mouse to split the personalities of Mahastamaprapta, Guanyin Bodhisattva, Samantabhadra, and even Sakyamuni, so that he could immediately learn their divine power. This was the right way to study the thoughts of Buddhism. Chapter 904. That sixth Prince Chi Lei was given a scroll of scripture by Chenong. The color and luster of that scroll was pure gold, and it looked like it was made of gold or silk. Looking at it, there were countless Sanskrit characters the size of a fly, decorating dozens of visualization diagrams like stars in the sky. The characters and diagrams were sparkling with a silver light, looking extremely sacred. Those dozens of visualization diagrams were composed of countless symbols that contained spiritual information. Looking at them, they looked like a pool of silver light. The gods and Buddhas on them looked solemn and dignified. At first glance, anyone could tell that it was a treasure. Only the Monkey King who was at the side could see it clearly. This was obviously a very advanced spiritual information technique. Under the dignified pictures of deities and Buddhas, there is a deep research on the mind, consciousness, and brain functions of humans. The Monkey King thought to himself, "My ancestral master is indeed not a good person. How can such a technique be achieved without dissecting the brains of tens of thousands of people? I'm afraid that not only humans, but all the animals in the world, cows, horses, monkeys, and pigs have all fallen into his hands." Thinking of this, the Monkey King was a little worried. He sighed and said, I was wondering why the 10 million demon army that I subdued was stolen by him. So it turns out that the ancestral master is also interested in the brains of demons. How pitiful! How pitiful! I wonder how many of those 10 million demon kings are still alive. And the raging monkey king, lion camel king, and the other 2 demon kings, I wonder if they're still in one piece. I don't want my ancestral master to dissect them and research them. Thinking of this, the monkey king shuddered and said, I forgot. I was born as a heavenly stone monkey. Back when I was wreaking havoc in hell, I saw that I was the only heavenly stone monkey in existence. I was the only heavenly stone monkey in existence. Furthermore, I'm a silicon-based organism that mimics the carbon-based structure. Wouldn't I be a research specimen with great research value? My brain should be able to attract the ancestral master's interest. When I went to acknowledge him as my master, Patriarch came for no reason. Could it be? Wukong didn't dare to think further and hurriedly restrained the inner monkey. Now that Wukong had received the inheritance, he naturally wouldn't have these worries anymore. Even if Chenong was interested in the stone monkey's brain structure and primordial spirit consciousness, he only needed to assign an assignment and ask Wukong to thoroughly study himself and report it. However, he still sincerely said in his heart, Thank you, Patriarch, for not killing me. When Goku looked at the 6th prince again, there was a faint trace of joy in his eyes. The 6th prince knew that the scroll in his hand was a treasure, so he quickly put it away. He was secretly anxious, so he left in a hurry without saying goodbye. After the 6th prince left, the other nobles didn't dare to approach Chenong. The Monkey King hurriedly asked, Patriarch, I have many problems when researching the Zhobo talisman. I hope that Patriarch can give me some guidance. Chenong smiled and said, As a teacher, I have to teach and clear up doubts. Monkey King, feel free to ask. As long as you don't ask for any specific homework, I will answer all your questions. The Monkey King then asked, Patriarch, the Buddhist divine arts originate from the consciousness. However, the consciousness is just a sensory organ. How can it give rise to the power of thought and become a divine art? Chenong explained, in the past, when I discussed Tao with Laozi, I once said that the Taoists look at flowers, they gather, disperse, condense, and combine. It said that matter has 2 characteristics. They are particles, waves, and qi. Qi forms all things. It also said that the Buddhists look at flowers, they're just thoughts. It said that there is only one's heart and one's self, everything in the void, and the reality is achieved. But Master also said that the subjective and idealistic view of the world is not good. The world is objective and material. The Buddhists divide the world into the colorless realm, the color realm, and the desire realm. They use their own consciousness to observe the world, and their attitude towards the objective and real world is only interesting, but not the truth. Now, the Buddhist magical power and divine arts are objective and real. How do you explain this? Chenong smiled and said, Everything in the void, although is biased, it is also an objective fact. The Buddhists recognize that the nature of matter includes not only the attributes that we can see, but also the attributes that humans can't see. In other words, the objective things that humans know are limited to their knowledge. Just like an iceberg on the sea, standing on the shore, one can only see a small part of it. Outside of his cognitive world, there are more attributes and concepts of matter. However, in terms of understanding such objective phenomena, the Buddhists are different from real science. The Buddhists talk about color and emptiness. They call the attributes of the objective things that humans know as the color, while the attributes and rules of the objective things that humans can't recognize are called emptiness. However, they can't correctly recognize that these rules are the objective laws that humans use to understand the world, and they think that these are the objective laws of the world itself. They can't recognize that these are the attributes of the objective world given by human consciousness, but they think that these are the objective properties of the world itself. This is falling into the trap of idealism, and they think that human consciousness can determine the appearance of emptiness of things. In other words, if I see a flower as a flower, it is the appearance of a flower. If I understand emptiness, then the flower is just an appearance. If I put down the appearance of the flower and pick up the appearance of the world, then the flower is a world. Chunong held a golden datura flower and demonstrated to Monkey King. The golden datura flower sprinkled down a bit of light, and Monkey King looked at it. There was indeed a world in the flower. When he looked at Chunong again, he saw that Chunong was looking at him deeply. Suddenly, he understood and said, "This is the supernatural power. This is the supernatural power. And the power that reverses the supernatural power is the power of telekinesis. There is no such thing as telekinesis." Chun-Ong sneered and said, "It's a flower, and other than a flower, everything that mortals can't recognize is also a flower. But you say it's a world, don't you think it's funny? Fire can burn, water can flow, and these are the objective properties behind things. Humans can't see them, but they can recognize and summarize them. However, the Buddhists say that it is the emptiness of matter. There are also wind, earth, water, and fire, and they come up with a lot of emptiness. This shows that once one's understanding of the world goes astray, there will be all kinds of distortions. The telekinesis and wish that the Buddhists talk about are just distortions of science." Chunong said seriously, "Monkey King, you asked about the reason behind the objective existence of the supernatural power in the Buddhists. It's actually very simple. This world has all kinds of properties outside of our understanding. Compared to the invisible bright world, that world can be called the dark world. Everything outside of our understanding is seen as emptiness. In places that don't exist, there are actually many existences. For example, when mortals can't recognize the air, we use carbon monoxide as a poisonous gas weapon. Then, when mortals see the people we kill, they will definitely exclaim, 'Supernatural power.' As for the Buddhists, they found a kind of power that mortals can't detect, and they recognize a part of the world that mortals can't recognize. That kind of power is mana, and the law that mana acts on the world is supernatural power. The observer's experiment revealed a part of the power that consciousness acts on matter, and the general name of the power that consciousness acts on matter is the power of telekinesis. And using the law of this power that exists objectively is supernatural power. How simple. Actually, think about it, Monkey King." Chunong gently stretched out his hand and took a stone. "I use gravitational waves to move matter. Is this gravitational wave magical power? Isn't this a supernatural power in the eyes of countless immortals and Buddhas?" Monkey King took out a torchlight, turned it on, and lit up a small part of the sky. He smiled and said, "So, Master, is it also a supernatural power for me to use this torchlight randomly? The electricity inside is also magical power." "No, Monkey King, electricity is not my own power. It's an external force. Therefore, this is a magical treasure, not magical power," Chunong said with a smile. "Moreover, if you wait for mortals to develop electricity, this won't be considered a magic treasure anymore." Chunong lightly tapped on Monkey King's head, and Monkey King felt many formulas and data appearing in his mind. Chunong said, "This research on telekinesis is related to your homework, so I won't give you any pointers. I can only give you some basic attributes of telekinesis to inspire your research." "I see." Monkey King analyzed and understood. Master's research is really thorough. This telekinesis is really mysterious. Just with the power of consciousness, it can pry open so many laws and cultivate all kinds of supernatural power. So, the cultivation of supernatural power is to familiarize yourself with these things. No wonder Master said that the so-called enlightenment, realm, and awareness are just information. If one only knows how, but not why, then what's the difference between brainwashing and enlightenment? Therefore, other than science, all cultivation can be brainwashed. If Master can research thoroughly and grasp the information of that old Buddha, how difficult would it be to brainwash 8 to 10 Buddha ancestors? No matter how difficult it is, it's just a technical problem. Chunong shook his head and said, "Monkey King, you are wrong." Monkey King raised his head in shock and saw Chunong replying, "Even if it's scientific research, It can also be brainwashed. Wash away the original personality, instill scientific knowledge, and make a researcher. What's so difficult about pursuing the path of science? Knowing is knowing, not knowing is not knowing. In this world, there's only the difference between knowing and not knowing. How can there be the difference between knowing through enlightenment and knowing through brainwashing? Knowledge is always the same. It's just a matter of whether the brainwashing technique is mature or not. All wills can be brainwashed. All memories can be brainwashed. All emotions, personality, and self can be brainwashed. Because humans are just objects in the objective world. They can recognize, change, and develop. Brainwashing technique is good. Knowledge cannot be forgotten. If there's a problem, the technique is not good enough. Chun-Ong recited a poem and asked Monkey King, "Monkey King, if you don't want to learn, feel free to tell Master." Master has already developed brainwashing techniques for most life forms, including you. I guarantee that you will learn it once I give it to you. Master's technique is mature, and even the personality won't be lost. The self will still exist, and it's definitely no different from what you learn yourself. Monkey King, are you willing? Chun-Ong smiled like a Buddha on a spiritual mountain. His eyes shone with a thirst for knowledge and curiosity towards the structure of Monkey King's brain. Monkey King's back was drenched in cold sweat. Master, I will definitely learn well. In the void, Chun-Ang's terrified laughter could be heard. Science must be repeatable. If it can't be repeated, it must be pseudoscience. I'm so scientific, so of course it can be repeated. If I have the time, I must research and replicate my information to brainwash the entire universe. What interesting things will happen? It's a pity that there's a brainwashing paradox. A person's scientific knowledge will never be able to perfectly brainwash their own information. Therefore, even if I want to brainwash the entire universe into my level of knowledge, there will be very serious repercussions. It's just the collapse of the original knowledge and the death of the personality. Chapter 905. Monkey King pondered over the information that Chun-Ong had passed to him. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration and asked Chun-Ong, "Master, I just thought of a method that can help Master expand the sect. As the saying goes, one must pull the head sheep when pulling a sheep. From what I see, the shepherds of Itu country are usually able to drive thousands of sheep by themselves. To trick people into the sect, it should be like driving a flock of sheep. As long as you manage the head sheep well, the rest of the flock will only follow you. If you want to expand the sect, you can't count on those foolish people. In this crowd, there are virtuous and foolish people. Among them, the intelligent ones should be bought with power and benefits. Among them, the foolish ones only need to fool them with lies. I see that the monks of the Western Sand sect only care about their own cultivation and enlightenment. They are separated from the believers and can't be active. Master's Pure Land sect can't be like this. Why not create a cultivation method that borrows the power of the masses and let them wholeheartedly help Master to trick people's souls? In this way, the flock will have its head sheep to lead the way. We only need to pay attention to the head sheep." "Monkey King," Chun-Ong said in surprise, "you are very perceptive." This method of pulling sheep heads into the cult had great potential. Moreover, in the area where the cult was being spread, there would definitely be people with high prestige, either shamans or tribal leaders. Buying one of these sheep heads would be able to pull a whole bunch of them over. The other sects also understand this principle. Therefore, those who are sent to spread their teachings are still the nobles. In the Buddhist scriptures, those with names are all the nobles and commoners. Even if they save Buddha and worship Sakyamuni, they are only known as shepherds, good people, and second-rate merchants. But you're the first one who has truly thought of systematizing this principle and integrating it into cultivation techniques. Now that I've established Pure Land sect, researched the 9 senses, and experimented with cultivation methods, I should indeed have these preparations. Those who cultivate my cultivation method have borrowed the many sky demons, secret demons, and demons on my extreme joy diagram. They are already my wealth, but it's not enough to trick their soul cultivation. I still need to trick them into becoming our disciple. Dodola. Monkey King, What do you think we should do? The Monkey King thought for a moment and said, we have to turn the human population into a resource for cultivation. Master once said that once one's consciousness is enlightened, they would be able to cultivate their divine arts. The willpower and the power of will were originally one, but the power of self was the willpower, and the power of others was the power of will. Those Buddhist bodhisattvas and Buddhas spread their faith and collect the power of wishes to nourish themselves. Then, they use their own power of wishes to help their disciples cultivate. Therefore, the entire system is that all living beings use the power of wishes to support the Buddha, and the Buddha uses the power of wishes to surpass the monks, and the monks teach all living beings to believe in the Buddha. This is a grace from above, and the Buddha and Bodhisattva monopolizes the power of wishes. If we want to poach from them and increase our competitiveness, we need to change. Monkey King said. Chenong just smiled. Oh, how so? If we want to make those monks head sheep, we need wish power. Spiritual mountain system is a way to centralize power because it nurtures subordinates and strengthens the system. Master, you are different. You are rearing sheep, and when those sheep get fat, they're also part of your family's wealth. You have to be picky when you kill them. The cost of rearing sheep is different from the wages of rearing people. The best way is to pull more people into the sect. The more people you pull, the more benefits you will get. Moreover, these benefits are not given to them by us, but by themselves. We can modify the bottom level of the cultivation method and let those cultivators directly use the power of wishes of others to cultivate. Just like farmers, the more faith they plant, the more power of wishes they can cultivate. You want to turn the wages into taxes. Chenong sighed. However, Monkey King, the souls of the believers are like sheep, and the power of wishes is the wool. Spiritual mountain keeps all the wool for itself, and pays the monks who pull the wool. Now, you are raising the sheep as if they are head sheep. Although the meat is rotting in the pot, the efficiency of the head sheep in using the power of wishes is not as high as mine. With an extra charge, I'm afraid the loss will be 80 to 90%. Otherwise, Dowling Mountain doesn't want to use this method. Master, these are all technical problems. Technical problems should be solved with techniques. Monkey King cupped his fists and said fawningly, you can develop a technique to reduce the loss, and you can have the best of both worlds, right? Chenong closed his eyes and thought for a while, then said, this lossless transmission of power of wishes is a little difficult. It is not a technical problem, but I am afraid that those shameless people from Spiritual Mountain will immediately come to steal it and make it easy for outsiders. But fortunately, I have thought of an encryption method here. When your old Grandmaster and I established the doctrine of the Pure Land, for the convenience of all living beings, we developed a willpower communication protocol called chanting Buddha names. Your old Grandmaster naturally borrowed the name of Amit Ba, using his own supreme willpower to open up the wisdom of all living beings. But other than monitoring the holder's data, I have also developed another set of willpower transmission encrypted communication protocol. After all, the Pure Land of Bliss is my family's treasure. It is not difficult to rewrite the underlying information. This method requires two preparations. First, I will directly harvest the power of wishes through the Pure Land. I have thought of a name called the national tax. Second, those who cultivate the Pure Land Dharma that I established can also borrow my power to create their own Pure Land and harvest the power of wishes in the vicinity, which is the local tax. With these two tax systems, it will stimulate the enthusiasm of the head sheep, and it will not waste the wealth that I deserve. This is the cleanest way to harvest the sheep. Chenong pondered for a while, and a golden cloth flew out from his sleeves. Countless tiny words floated out from it. Monkey King took a closer look and saw that it was a technique to open up a Pure Land. This technique could borrow the power of the Pure Land of Bliss from the Pure Land of Bliss in Chenong's possession to open up the Meru Mountain in one's heart and create a Pure Land. The Pure Land Dharma uses the power of wishes from the believers and uses the eyes of countless living beings to observe the heavens and earth. This is the Tao of the mind's eye, and also the Tao of the power of wishes. The power of wishes nourishes the pure land, and it can help the cultivator cultivate the power of will, achieve enlightenment, and ascend to the pure land of bliss and be harvested by Chunong. This pure land Dharma not only can open up the pure land in one's heart, but it can also open up the pure land of bliss. This is the Tao of farming and herding. Nurture the cultivators, harvest at fixed points, cultivate the dojo, and harvest according to the crop. Farming and herding must be strong. Very good, very good. Monkey King clapped his hands and laughed. This method of nurturing the masses, using the power of wishes from the believers to nourish one's own power of will, and opening up the 9 senses of Buddhism is indeed a brilliant method. Furthermore, those cultivators who have cultivated the 9 senses of Buddhism are also nurtured by us. When the 9 senses of Buddhism are perfected, they will be brought to the pure land of bliss. Wonderful. In his heart, Monkey King thought, after giving so many samples to Master and even the pure land of bliss as a laboratory, Master wouldn't think of taking over my family's business, right? It's better for you to die than for me. I've given Master so many benefits, and he can finally protect my heaven-equal demon kingdom. Chun Ang's eyes flashed, and he suddenly said, "However, Monkey King, there are still some flaws in your idea. Let me fix them for you. The society of herding the masses is not as simple as a flock of sheep. Look at this Ichu kingdom. The Ichu king is considered a sheep, but have the sheep under him ever submitted to him? Therefore, the human world is like a flock of sheep, big and small, mixed together. There are countless sheep in the flock, and some of them are ruled by others, but these sheep are ruled by other sheep. Therefore, the Tao of shepherding is not limited to cultivators. Although your method is good, it can only benefit the sheep who are at the top of the hierarchy. It can't buy over the sheep who are at the bottom." Chinong pointed out, although it is more efficient, it can't maximize the benefits and efficiency. Monkey King sighed in admiration. "Master, how should I change it? Although there are intelligent people among the mortals, their vision is different. Cultivators find it hard to believe, but they're the easiest to believe. You can change our teachings and lie to them. Tell them that good karma is rewarded and that the heart of a person is Buddha, which is the best karma. It is equivalent to saving a life, and there is boundless good. If you bring 1 person here, you can eliminate the karma of the kingdom. If you bring 2 people here, you can go to the afterlife and enjoy happiness. If you bring 3 people here, you can go to the pure land of ultimate bliss. The teachings and scriptures state clearly that to bring people into the sect, you have to start from your own family and friends. The closer you are to them, the more you have to persuade them. If you don't persuade them, it will be karma, and it will harm their family and friends. The 3 evil paths are harming people. In the pure land of ultimate bliss, the 6 paths of reincarnation are the most important projects in the world. If you bring 1 person here, and they believe in Buddhism and cultivate good karma, you will have a share. Also, the pure land of ultimate bliss has different levels. We have a system of 5 levels and 3 levels. The more people you bring, the higher the level of the pure land of ultimate bliss. When you reach the highest level, you will be able to achieve enlightenment and become a Buddha with limitless mana. Master, Monkey King's head was spinning as he listened. What is this system of 5 levels and 3 levels? I don't understand. Chinong said sternly. Monkey King, you have to understand the essence. There is nothing that you can't understand. What we're doing now is capital operation, the so-called capital operation. The so-called capital operations are what the living beings don't need. Sigh, those consciousnesses, power of will, and souls are lent to us. We will operate them and return them to them. We will use the limitless power of will to help them escape from the sea of bitterness that is the world. They will reach nirvana and peace, the shore of boundless joy. This is a great good deed to help the living beings. You have to do it well and do it with your heart. Go and write the scriptures according to the essence that I just said. The first scripture is about the scriptures, say that I said it. The second scripture is about the laws, say that you guys experienced my essence and said it. The last scripture is about the theories. Pretend to be those mortal cultivators who wrote it. There are a total of 3,000 scrolls in the scriptures. Let me check them after you are done. Wukong was complaining inwardly when he heard Chenong say, "By the way, we need to add information on mental induction to the scripture." Chenong had just opened his mouth when he vetoed, "Forget it. I should do such an important thing personally. Your research on brainwashing technology is not mature yet. I must personally undertake the work of adding mental infection and psychological induction to the scripture." Chapter 906. Chenong first came up with a basic brainwashing technique. This brainwashing technique, when it came to the use of telekinesis, was named by Chenong as expiation. At the same time, with this expiation technique as the foundation, Chenong carried out a large-scale development of its specific application, mainly by combining the information channels of the other five senses and reprogramming the brainwashing technique through other channels. To put it bluntly, it was a simple and useful tool for people who could not directly use their consciousness and senses, and for cultivators who could not directly use telekinesis to interfere with the objective world. After all, not everyone could control their consciousness as easily as Chenong and the Masthamaprapta. They were like those really skilled programmers who could directly analyze the code of consciousness information. Most cultivators, more than 99% of them, were far from that level. Therefore, even though Chenong had developed the basic protocol to control the human body's information through consciousness, bypassing the normal channels and bypassing the authorization of the brain, including the transmission protocol of the nervous system, the conscious program that controlled behavior, and the subconscious program that drove organ functions, he could directly interfere with and control consciousness to obtain the highest authority of brainwashing technique. He had clearly open-sourced the loopholes and codes of the communication protocol of human consciousness. Those second-rate hackers could only rely on the programming tools developed by top hackers like Chenong and the Masthamaprapta to invade and control the consciousness of others. The open-source loopholes and codes used to obtain the highest authority of the system through the loopholes in the protocol was this basic expiation technique. However, Chenong had to develop the operating program of this basic expiation technique, which was the telekinesis technique that contained the expiation technique. Only then would he be able to make those idiots who only knew how to cultivate this technique realize the function he had developed: expiation, in other words, brainwashing other beings. In the process, he also had to take care of those who could not even understand the programming language of telekinesis. He had to create an operating interface so that they could use the mouse to click on the few buttons with instructions to use the program. In fact, there were a lot of such people. Among the monsters that Chenong had locked in the golden ship of fate, except for a few monster kings that were no taller than his index finger, none of them knew how to use the Buddhist Dharma power like psyche power. Of course, in addition to the problem of intelligence and knowledge, it was also related to the monster's habit of using the Dharma power system like demon power. The reason was that it did not require psyche power. It only required the combination of the mouth, eyes, and even the body to form a dignified manner, Buddha's aura, and illusions within the five senses and five senses. It was best to use this psyche power, supernatural power, to directly write this principle into the future Pure Land Sex supernatural power system. Every move would be brainwashed. This was the inspiration Chenong had when he saw the charming art of the disciples of Kind Boathouse in the Great Tang Dynasty. As for sound, light, color, and so on, the information from the outside world obtained by the five conventional senses of the human body, as well as the neurotransmission pathways, nerve electrical signals, and brain quantum signals have long been cracked by Chenong. For Goku, the brain is still a black box that has only been explored. But to Chenong, the operation of the human nervous system and brain could not be clearer. Therefore, it did not take much effort for Chenong to easily figure out the technique of using the five senses to interfere with the consciousness of the brain and control the personality. It could be said that this could be said to be a combination of hypnosis, spiritual guidance, hormone interference, brainwave interference, mind control, and all kinds of strange practical experience that originated from the release of mental strength, psychic power, psychology, and so on. It could be said to be a great achievement in the practical activities of human brainwashing. By combining sound hypnosis, Buddhist sound incantation, oral secret mantra, human auditory nerve signal analysis, spiritual guidance, sound wave, personality analysis, the function of auditory signal in the brain quantum system, and other auditory mind control techniques. Chinong combined the newly developed consciousness brainwashing technique with these auditory mind control techniques. It became the first kind of supernatural power that was easy to use, easy to learn, but difficult to master, with a simple foundation, but had a great potential for development. Zen mantra. Oema and I ba mi hum. This supernatural power specialized in hearing and hearing, brainwashing invisibly. Not only could it enlighten, brainwash others, but it could also enlighten, brainwash oneself. The six-syllable mantra used the same kind of brainwashing technique, but the brainwashing information was different. It was aimed at the various selves of all conscious people. Generally, the self was related to emotions and desires, and the expression in the objective world was pain. The real self was pain, and the realization of the biological nature of all living beings in the objective world was desire, and the realization of the consciousness of all living beings in the objective world was emotion. However, the feedback of any desire and emotion in the objective world was pain. Therefore, pain was the source of all reality. Reality was full of pain, while illusion was full of happiness. Brainwashing. No, the main method of enlightenment was to make use of the biological nature and consciousness of all living beings and the feedback of pain and their aversion to pain, so that they would actively not recognize the objective world and pursue illusion, and then be brainwashed, no, enlightened. Therefore, Chinong wrote in the six-syllable mantra, Supreme, magnanimity, divine power, can pass all sufferings. The world is a great sea of sufferings. Chinong sighed. As long as you are brainwashed, you can reach the other side and escape all sufferings. The other side that Sakyamuni mentioned is too complicated. Tranquility and nirvana. Is this a state that humans can reach? It's more realistic to come to the other side that I've opened for all living beings, the pure land of ultimate bliss. The pain of the world should be borne by people like us. All confusion, fear, hesitation, the pain of transforming oneself, the cruelty of killing your past self, the despair of having no way out, all should belong to me. The self is reality, the reality is pain, and the self is the source of pain. Give yourself to me, and you can escape all pain and live in the pure land that I've created for you. May all the sufferings and sufferings in the Saha world belong to me. Chinong sighed. I am Amateus Buddha. Chinong sat down and put his palms together. His face showed a bitter expression. Countless sounds of chanting mantras appeared around him. Countless beautiful heavenly flowers appeared. Countless beautiful heavenly ladies appeared. Countless peaceful and pure lights appeared. And countless subtle smells appeared. His body and the back of his head emitted the light of immeasurable wisdom. And there were 32 appearances that were hard to describe. Amateus Buddha's hands formed 9 seals and made a vow. If I become Buddha, the hungry ghosts and beasts in the country will not attain enlightenment. If I become Buddha, the deities in the country will die of old age, and those who return to the 3 evil paths will not attain enlightenment. If I become Buddha, all the bodhisattvas in the Buddha world will hear my name, and after they die of old age, they will continue to practice Sanskrit until they become Buddha. Those who do not will not attain enlightenment. If I become Buddha, I will be above the earth. As for the void, the palaces, the temples, the ponds, and the trees, everything in the country will be made of immeasurable treasures, hundreds of thousands of fragrances, and they will be combined together. The beauty of it will surpass the deities. Its fragrance will permeate the world, and those who smell it will all practice Buddhism. Those who do not will not attain enlightenment. If I become Buddha, all the bodhisattvas in the other countries will hear my name, and if they do not attain the first, second, and third Dharma, they will not attain enlightenment. Those who do not retreat will not attain enlightenment. Chapter 907. 6 days later, Zhu Qishu and Zhu Dehao finally sorted out the messy situation in the Yizu kingdom. They began to extend their tentacles into the muddy waters. The first thing they had to do was to seek an audience with the king of Yizu and obtain the item that the two immortals had left for him to complete the mission. So Zhu Dehao had no choice but to seek an audience with this mediocre lord of Yizu in the early morning, when there were fewer gazes staring at the palace with ulterior motives. The morning north wind brought with it a bone-chilling chill as it blew against Zhu Dehao's face. But he did not care that the last bit of moisture had been scraped away from his delicate skin, which had been nurtured by a pampered life. Subconsciously licking his chapped lips, Zhu Qishu calmly organized the words he was going to use to convince the king of Yizu. A voice in who came from the palace. "The king has granted you an audience. Let him in." Drawing a tiger to resemble a dog, Zhu Qishu sneered inwardly. This king of Yizu was far inferior to his father. If the old king used the logic of survival of the fittest on the grasslands and cruelty to the weak to intimidate the ambitious nobles of the 6 tribes of Yizu, and used the cunning and coldness of a wolf king to intimidate his strong subordinates, then this king of Yizu would only use useless etiquette to emphasize hierarchy and protect his own power and status. But Zhu Qishu also knew that the king of Yizu was not the only one who needed to do this. He represented the interests of a group of people. After learning how to build cities and farm in the Central Plains, the nobles of the 6 tribes gradually forgot the cruel survival of the fittest on the grasslands. They did not want to experience such cruel training and dangerous elimination. They needed a clearer hierarchy to protect their own interests, and the king of Yizu was only a representative of these people's interests. Zhu Qishu calmly analyzed, but his feet did not stop. In the distance, he saw the only place in the palace that was full of life and color, the tall, deer terrace pavilion. The king of Yizu used this building, which still bloomed with mandala flowers in the cold winter, to declare his authority to the nobles of Yizu and to show the slaves and poor that it was auspicious. For the past few days, he had been meeting his close allies and trying to rope in the nobles. When he reached Deer Terrace Pavilion, Zhu Qishu heard the Yizu king's reprimand from above. Then, a thin figure ran out of the palace. The figure ran very fast, like a running dog. He did not even see Zhu Qishu blocking in front of him and collided with him. Only now did merchant Zhu have time to see his face clearly. His red fox fur coat was full of mud stains. His face, which still carried a bit of childishness, was now covered in bruises. His mouth had been blown open, and the gold, bronze, and all sorts of gemstones that he usually wore were nowhere to be seen. Even Zhu Qishu's 2 guards didn't think much of him. A mocking voice came from Deer Terrace Pavilion. "Chile, do you still think that you are that prince that is doted on by father? I heard that you went to provoke those people from the Central Plains to see their magic. In the end, you mistakenly killed your uncle." "Ha ha." Several sharp laughs came from Deer Terrace Pavilion, clearly coming from the mouths of a few youths. At this time, there was a dark-skinned, short and fat youth that made a rude gesture at Chi Lei below the stage. He laughed loudly and said, "Chi Lei, I remember that you once insulted me in front of my face. You said that I am the son of a slave, but now that He Nu wants to take your mother away, you will have another father." Ha 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 ha. The princes on Deer Terrace Pavilion began to laugh. Zhu Qishu did not find it strange. The warhounds who people were not like the Central Plains, they did not care about chastity and bloodline. Although the feudal lords of the Central Plains were not willing to give their wives who had given birth to their sons to their subordinates as wives, this was no longer a matter of special preferences. This was a matter of shaking the foundation. It was related to inheritance. As long as that person did not go crazy, as long as there was an elder in the clan that was awake, this kind of thing would never happen. But even for the feudal lords and officials of the Central Plains, giving a slave who had given birth to a son or a concubine to a subordinate as a wife was not a rare matter. Only the warhounds did not have a patriarchal system. There was no division of wives and concubines. Of course, this did not mean that the Ichu king's harem was equal. On the contrary, the wives of those large nobles were so powerful that the Ichu king did not dare offend them. They even had more authority than the wives of the feudal lords. Encountering a weaker chief, having an affair outside was not a rare matter. As for the sixth Prince Chi, his mother's family was once strong, but it suddenly declined, so he encountered a very awkward matter. Chi was not an adult prince, so he did not have his own subordinates. According to normal circumstances, not long after his royal father, the Ichu king, would give him a position and his uncle would give him warriors and slaves. Adding in the population his father gave him, he would be like his two older brothers, having a subordinate tribe that was not weak. But before these good things could happen to him, Chi had already lost his backing. He became the same as the other princes who did not have a strong mother, becoming the target of ridicule for those princes whose mothers were slaves and small nobles. Moreover, because his mother's family was the strongest among all the princes, his uncle controlled one of the 6 tribes and was one of the 10 most powerful people in the Ichu country. So it could be imagined how the other princes who had the chance to compete for the throne would be afraid of him, and how the princes who had suffered a loss against him would retaliate. Ever since he saw Chun Ong last time, Chi felt like he was living in a nightmare. Zhu Dehao had naturally investigated this. In fact, after the banquet 6 days ago, the fight for power in the Yuji tribe was the focus of the entire Ichu country. He even knew about the deal between the Ichu king and the tribe leader Hainu. The great nobles of the Yuji tribe, Hainu, had made the first move and gained the upper hand in the fight for the power left by Chi Lei's uncle. He received the support of the Ichu king, but the nobles on the side of the great wizard Jian had been thinking of ways to destroy Hainu's power. At this time, there were 2 sides. Originally, they were inclined to the Ichu king, but because the tribe leader was killed, they were extremely afraid of Hainu's power left by the former Yuji tribe leader. This became the key to this war. Of course, the Ichu king wanted to use Chi Lei's mother to control this power, but Hainu was not a fool. He had more choices than the Ichu king. It was impossible for him to let go of this fat piece of meat. In the end, under the threat of Hainu relying on Jian's power, the Ichu king had to agree to give his ex-wife, who had lost power, to Hainu as his wife. In this way, Hainu could gain the loyalty of the remaining forces of the Chi Lei tribe, and at the same time, cut off the possibility of the Ichu king controlling the Yuji tribe. As for Chi Lei's mother, in fact, she was very happy to continue to be a disfavored wife in the Ichu king's palace, to face the women she had once bullied, or to marry the new Yuji tribe leader, control the power left by her brother, and continue to act like a tyrant. The result was obvious. She still had the hope of giving birth to a son and inheriting the power of the Yuji tribe. As for Chi Lei, no matter which side he was on, he was an abandoned pawn. It was not difficult to understand why he was treated like this. During this time, he slept in the palace without charcoal. There were even people who deliberately poured ice water on him, looking at him in a sorry state without anything to warm him. He ate the food of the slaves and was looked down upon by the servants in the palace. In the past few days, he had been excluded and humiliated. He was almost going crazy. His belongings were all taken away, and his father never asked about it. It was as if he had forgotten about this son. Just now, Chi Lei took advantage of the guard's carelessness and wanted to make a last effort to break in to see his father. Chapter 908. Zhu Qishu simply remembered this matter in his heart. The reason why Zhu Qishu was able to reach his current position was because he would not let go of any information, even if it was insignificant. He was also able to sense where the opportunity was. However, he had another advantage, which was that he could always place his attention on more important matters. For example, the matter that he was going to discuss with the king of Itsu. When he met the king of Itsu, other than the guards in the palace, there was also the foreign monk brought by Daishu. When Zhu Qishu met him, the foreign monk was using unskilled foreign language to talk about the various evil paths of hell and the 6 paths of reincarnation. In his words, He even mentioned the karmic retribution, the 3 blessings of purity, etc. Looking at Zhu Daheo Shang, a suspicious shade of pink appeared on the tanned face of the foreign monk. Zhu Qishu sneered coldly in his heart. This foreign monk was still too inexperienced to think that he would feel embarrassed when he was borrowing the teachings of his competitor. A true charlatan and preachers would not only remain calm when plagiarizing. Even if it was plagiarism, they would be able to fabricate something even more ridiculous on the spot. Not only would they plagiarize the teachings of their competitor, they would even belittle the original version and boast even more. Without such thick skin, how could he be here to preach? If it was me, I would definitely denounce the theory of the blessings of the Pure Lands that physician Chen mentioned previously. I would say that the blessings of the Pure Lands are fake and inferior. That Pure Land of ultimate bliss is just a small Pure Land, and the Pure Lands in our sect are the true Pure Lands. Cultivating the blessings of the Pure Lands is the true blessings. There are countless benefits that far surpass his. The various divine arts created by Chun Ong had yet to be disseminated, and the foreign monk didn't know what Zhu Deheo Shang was thinking. Otherwise, if that monk managed to cultivate the mind-reading technique that allowed him to steal the consciousness of others, he would definitely complain, how can borrowing from the teachings be called plagiarism? Teachings. Can the things in the religion be considered plagiarism? That is called revelation, the actions of the prophets, the enlightenment of the deities and Buddhas. Following that, he said some difficult words like revelation from the deities and Buddhas and being inspired. He had to make sure that others would be confused and could only kneel down. Otherwise, there would be saints shouting Allah when the Jews borrowed from Egyptian mythology, when Noah built the great ark like in the Epic of Gilgamesh, when Jesus referenced the Jewish Old Testament, when Mamet plagiarized the New Testament discourses written by Jesus, when the Catholic Bible annotated me, when the Eastern Orthodox Church annotated me, when the Protestant Church annotated me, when Hong Xiuqiuan claimed to be the second brother of Jesus, when Gautama Buddha comprehended the thoughts of Buddhism, when the Catholic Church recited the rosary and counted the rosary beads, when Jehovah God used the name of God Hao Yin, and when Taoism emphasized reincarnation and hell. Which one of them paid attention to copyright issues? Not only were they not ashamed of the fact that they borrowed from others, they even shouted and made a ruckus, saying that they wanted to kill all the people that they borrowed from. Fortunately, Merchant Zhu was not a devout believer and did not care about plagiarism. Otherwise, if he insisted on exposing the other party in front of the king of Itsu, then even if the old monk was ashamed, he would still argue with him with a red face. He would use the most powerful skill in his life to boast that there was no limit to the teachings of Mount Lingshan and ruthlessly defeat the theory of Chun Ang's Pure Land fake sect. This skill was called debate, and it was the special skill of the followers of Mount Lingshan's Buddha. If the debate was still not as good as the others, then the old monk could only pick up the Buddha's commandment blade and mercifully send those who slandered Buddha to the hell of Avicii, never to be reincarnated. When the king of Itsu saw Merchant Zhu, he warmly greeted him. Brother Zhu, quickly sit down. I have something to ask you. This Sin the Master invited himself to see me and told me about the profound dharma of Sin, which is actually similar to the 2 immortals of the Central Plains. Their Sin also has the pure land of reincarnation and cultivation of blessings and karma. The old monk braced himself and said, Not at all, not at all. Such words are not rare in Sin. I also have some understanding of it. I believe the 2 immortals of the Central Plains are knowledgeable and heard it from Sin. Even a shrewd merchant like Merchant Zhu could not help but reveal an expression of shock and anger. He did not expect this old monk to blush, but his level of shamelessness was not lower than his. Merchant Zhu coughed lightly and laughed. You must have lost your mind. Without a pure land, how can there be the meaning of a pure land? I also know about the 6 paths of reincarnation. This saying is widely spread, and the immortals of the Central Plains have also discussed about it. But in the bitter sea of reincarnation, it is the 2 immortals of the Central Plains, Amitabha Buddha and Amitabha Buddha, who turned into who? Blessings and karma are also realized by the wishes of the two Buddhas, creating another cycle of reincarnation. Merchant Zhu said to the king of Yixiu, "Your Majesty has also seen the picture of the pure land of reincarnation in the hands of the two immortals. If not for the two Buddhas who created the pure land of reincarnation, how could there be such a picture of the heavenly realm? That foreign monk got the truth from your Majesty. He believes in the power of the gods and Buddhas and does not have such great wisdom and power. He can only brag about it. Your Majesty must not believe it." He then turned to the old monk and said, "First there was the pure land of reincarnation, then there was the pure land truth. Now that you have fabricated the truth, where is your pure land?" The old monk held a vase and smiled. "Your pure land of reincarnation is just a small kiliacosm. Your Majesty only took a look at it and it is just a picture. There might not be anything real about it. But I have invited your Majesty to visit our Buddha's great kiliacosm pure land through this vase. There are only 3 realms in the great kiliacosm pure land: Maitreya pure land and Glaze pure land. In the Jambu realm, there are only 3 pure lands that are eternal and undying. Your Majesty entered the Maitreya pure land to take a look. Although it was only for an instant, you spent 3 days and 3 nights in the Maitreya pure land and comprehended the true essence of our Buddha." Merchant Zhu looked at the vase and sneered. "So it's this illusion vase. In the pure land of reincarnation, there are limitless bliss, limitless longevity, limitless light, limitless Brahman, named Amitabha, meaning Amitabha. He made 48 wishes to create the pure land of reincarnation. I believe you don't know about it and have not copied it before. I can give this Amitabha Buddha's great wish scripture to your Majesty to take a look. But since you were talking about the pure land of 3 realms, why don't you tell me about your Buddha's great wish to create the pure land of 3 realms? I don't want someone to go back and think hard about it after I pass on the scripture and come up with a plagiarized version of it." Merchant Judaheo pressed on. "Since you said that the pure land of reincarnation is only a lesser kiliacosm pure land, then I believe the great wish of the great kiliacosm pure land is far superior. If it is not superior, then it must be because you lied to your Majesty. May I ask your Majesty, how should we deal with this?" King Yixiu had just entered the great force treasure vase. How could an ordinary person see through the Bodhisattva's magical treasure? Therefore, the King Yixiu was already 90% convinced of the endless illusions within it. Now that Merchant Judaheo pressed on, he started to have doubts. However, he still needed to rely on the foreign monk to balance out Chenong and his group. The fact that the Monkey King killed a tribe leader so easily shocked him. Therefore, he hesitated. The foreign monk quickly interrupted and pretended to be angry. "I am just an ordinary monk from Sindhu. What I have learnt is not even 1% of the wisdom of the Bodhisattva and Buddha. How can I be compared to the celestials of the Central Plains? But the wisdom of our Buddha is boundless. If your Majesty wishes to ask, you just need to set up a platform and invite the Buddha and Bodhisattva to preach the Dharma. But the Dharma of the West is not to be taken lightly. Your Majesty will need to use the 7 treasures as offerings and fast for 3 days. After that, the deities and Buddhas will definitely respond." He turned to Merchant Judaheo and said, "The pure land of reincarnation is just some pictures. You are just exaggerating it. Actually, it is hard to say. I have invited your Majesty to see the 3 pure lands. Your Majesty knows about the various deities in the pure land of Maitreya. As for your pure land of reincarnation, it is still hard to say." Merchant Judaheo was overjoyed. In the blink of an eye, he came up with many vicious plans. He smiled coldly and said, "The pure land of reincarnation has all sorts of inconceivable things. Mortals who do not have such good karma will never be able to see it." The foreign monk retorted, "The king is a person with great karma. Why can't he see it?" King Yixiu's face darkened, but Merchant Judaheo ignored him. He said indifferently, "A mortal's ears. How can he see so many inconceivable things?" Merchant Judaheo changed his tone and said, although the king does not have great karma and can only enter the pure land of reincarnation, he can still be the king of the country for another lifetime. By cultivating for 10 lifetimes, he will have the chance to enter the pure land of reincarnation. The foreign monk tried to provoke King Itsu again, but merchant Zhu Dehao only said, the king did not believe in Amitabha Buddha in his previous life and did not receive the blessing of Amitabha Buddha. Therefore, his karma is not enough. Only by believing in Buddha for 10 lifetimes will he have the chance to enter the pure land of reincarnation. He knew that if he couldn't lower himself, he might as well put on airs. It was important to be close to the people, but he must not lose his airs. Since the competition had reached such an extent, why not let King Itsu revere the pure land of reincarnation more? Merchant Zhu Dehao tried to salvage the situation. Although the king cannot see the inconceivable things in the pure land of reincarnation, it doesn't mean that he cannot see the beauty of the pure land of reincarnation. You must know that there is something in the country that flows out from the pure land of reincarnation. It can allow the king to see a corner of the pure land. Oh, King Itsu asked curiously, what is that? Merchant Zhu laughed heartily and said, could it be that king has forgotten who planted this dear Terrace de Chira flower? Let the king know that the 2 Buddhas transformed the king and bloomed this flower. It is extraordinary. This flower is the Dachira flower that always blooms in the pure land of reincarnation. In the pure land of reincarnation, there will always be heavenly rain Dachira flower that is unbelievably beautiful. It is one of the countless wonders of the pure land. The king can understand it, and when this flower blooms, it will always bloom in Itsu country, and the pure land of reincarnation heavenly flower will descend into the mortal world. King Itsu frowned and said, but this Dachira flower has long existed in our country. Merchant Zhu Dehao argued, this flower is not that flower. The Dachira flower is the flower of the pure land, and its color is unimaginable. That is why it can only descend into the mortal world as an ordinary flower. However, its existence is already different. If the king doesn't believe me, you could try eating a piece of the Dachira flower. Chapter 909. Zhu Qishu looked to his left and right and saw a mandala flower quietly poking out from the left side of the hall. He rolled up his sleeves and walked down the stairs. He plucked off one of the mandala flowers from the mandala flower and brought it back to the table where the 3 of them sat. He used a teacup to carefully grind it against the table. The king of Itsu saw the pale gold petals ooze dark gold juice under the rolling pin of the pottery cup. In a short while, it was crushed into a small pile of medicinal paste. Zhu Qishu carefully gathered the rose gold medicinal paste and was about to put it in the incense burner to the side to bake. Wait! Under the signal of the king of Itsu, a guard stopped him. How can we use something of unknown origin in front of the king? The clever guard called over a slave and ordered, why aren't you testing the medicine for the king? Just bake it with fire. Zhu Qishu answered. Very soon, people brought over braziers in the 4 corners of the hall. The slave was pulled far away and placed the Dachira flower paste on the brazier to bake. After a while, the slave kneeling in front of the brazier seemed to smell something and took a deep breath. His trembling expression gradually relaxed, and a peaceful smile appeared on his face. The king of Itsu also seemed to smell a faint and subtle fragrance. This fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose, but when he tried to sense it, it was difficult to detect it clearly. The king of Itsu subconsciously twitched his nose, but with this thought, the lake in his heart rippled, and he could no longer smell the fragrance. At this time, Zhu Qishu smiled and said, the fragrance of the Dachira flower in the pure land of ultimate bliss is also known as the Sumru incense or sandalwood incense. This fragrance is not sensed by the nose, but the pure land of the pure land of ultimate bliss. It is neither wood nor air, neither smoke nor fire. It goes nowhere and comes nowhere. It is formed by the subtle wisdom of creation. It is called Amitabha, and the fragrance is solemn. This fragrance is the fragrance of consciousness, the fragrance of wisdom. It burns from the Sumra mountain in the heart, clear and ethereal, leading all beings to see the pure land of ultimate bliss. As soon as he finished speaking, the slave facing the incense pot had already slumped down. His body was very relaxed, and his pupils were dilated as if he was drunk. His expression was peaceful, as if all his fighting spirit had gradually disappeared. Zhu Dahasheng laughed and said, "This incense is the incense of wishful will, the incense of peace and harmony. It can dispel the 3 karmic hindrances, dispel the 5 evils, and make one's body and mind peaceful. There is no evil in one's heart, no jealousy, no greed, no anger, no calamity. This is the first commandment incense of the heart's Sumeru Dharmakaya incense. If you can light the first commandment incense, then you will have the opportunity to light the second commandment incense. You will be able to see good and evil, and your heart will not be disturbed. Third, Huixiang. Her heart is free from hindrance. She often uses her wisdom to observe her own nature. She does not commit any evil. The fourth incense is the liberation incense. One's heart has nothing to cling to, does not think of good, does not think of evil, is free and unhindered. The fifth incense is the liberation incense. Since one's heart has nothing to cling to, one must not sink into silence. One must learn widely and know one's own heart. One must attain the principles of Buddhism. One must be able to interact with things with light. One must have no self or others. One must reach Bodhi, and one's true nature is not easy. When Zhu Dahasheng said this, he pondered for a moment. He secretly recalled the analysis of the Dachira product's psychological dependence and addiction that Monkey King had written for him. The characteristics of the different stages of Dachira addiction, as well as the subsequent withdrawal reactions. The data recorded in detail the physical and psychological symptoms of the euphoric stage, the addictive stage, and the final collapse stage. At that time, Monkey King had casually made up a few Suru Dharmakaya fragrances that corresponded to the addictive stage. He said eloquently, "When this drug is used in the euphoric stage, it will show the special reaction of toluidine. The brain will be excited and the spirit will be clear. The efficiency of learning and work will be greatly improved. Fear, laziness, and most of the useless emotions will be lost. Even the IQ will increase. It can be called the wisdom incense. When the collapse stage is reached, the body's dependence will break through the physiological limit. The brain will be irreversibly damaged. The effect is similar to a mental illness. It's not that one doesn't think of good or evil. Except for the withdrawal reaction, one won't feel the pain of the human world. It's like living in an extremely beautiful world. Of course, when the withdrawal reaction occurs, it's similar to going to the 18th level of hell. At this time, the human world is no longer suitable for such people. They can only go to the Elysium. Isn't the incense that allows one to enter the Elysium called the liberation incense? When they reach the Elysium, the consciousness of these people who have overdosed on the drug and had a mental breakdown will be the experimental material that my master could only wish for. When they reach my master's laboratory, they can neither live nor die. At that time, they will feel the value of life and only want to be free. That's why it's called the liberation incense. As long as they don't die from my master's experiments, of course they will be able to understand the great terror that surpasses life and death. Their realm is comparable to that of the Mahastemaprapta Bodhisattva, or even Bodhi. As Monkey King said this, a monkey smile appeared on his furry face. He said, "Tell me, did I lie to them?" Zhu Dahao nodded his head vigorously and said with a terrified expression, "Absolutely not. Immortal Elder is really kind and compassionate. You told everything to those ignorant people who don't know what's good for them. However, in this world, there aren't many people who can understand Immortal Elder Sun's good intentions. Those ignorant people don't know what's good for them and ignore Immortal Elder's teachings. That's why so many bad things have happened." Well said. Monkey King patted Zhu Deheo's shoulder and said, "My master is planning to sell this mandala incense to a Paragodania state. He wants the Buddhists to smell this fragrance day and night. He wants the incense they worship to become this wonderful. When those Buddhists are addicted to the incense, I will go with my master to the western heaven mystical mountain to sell the mandala incense. The mandala incense in Ichu country is not the purest. The real good stuff is in my master's western paradise. When that time comes, I will make sure that all the Buddhists in the mystical mountain sell their golden bodies to us. Hearing Monkey King's maniacal laughter, Zhu Deheo woke up from his nightmare. His heart sank, and he thought, "Not good. I was poisoned by the mandala incense. Although I took the antidote first, the effect of the incense is on one's consciousness, evoking trivial thoughts. Without a sound, it will make one fall for it. It's hard to guard against it. Which immortal master, Chun, created this spirit root? That immortal master, son, is only immortal master Chen's disciple. The antidote he gave might not be of much use." He steadied his consciousness and his gradually lively thoughts. He focused his consciousness in front of him and saw that the old monk was staring at the void 3 inches in front of him in a daze. The Ichu king's eyes were lifeless, and he had already forgotten himself. He turned to look at the dear terrace pavilion hall and saw that the guards in hall were all swaying left and right as if they were drunk. Zhu Deheo thought to himself, "This is not good. If people find out that this datura fragrance is not a good thing, I will have to suffer losses, and I will have to find an excuse. Just say that this datura fragrance gives birth to wisdom, but it can also expose a person's evil nature. Many ugliness is caused by the fragrance eliminating the evil nature. Those Ichu nobles don't look like they have great perseverance or wisdom. They can break free from the psychological dependence of using it for the first time and discover the essence of the intoxicating smoke. Such people are all outstanding people who are willing to suffer all kinds of pain in the world and see the truth through pain. These nobles who love to deceive themselves? He. Zhu Qishu only sneered a few times. Zhu Deheo realized that his thoughts were overly lively. He hurriedly covered his mouth and nose to prevent the mandala incense from entering his nose. At this moment, the Ichu king clearly felt extreme joy. He seemed to have lost his mind as he smiled foolishly and drowsily. The old monk looked excited as he picked up his rosary beads and quickly chanted something. Zhu Deheo knew that this was the reason why people with strong consciousnesses would hallucinate under the influence of the drug. This mandala incense was the most powerful external devil. It came from the hands of the primordial demon, Chunong. In Buddhist terms, it was a terrifying devil king that could induce the heart devil and cause one to sink into an illusory state. Without a sound, it had already twisted the foreign monk's consciousness and caused him to sink into oblivion. But even if he woke up, he wouldn't realize it. Because the foreign monk's illusory state had originated from his heart, he would most likely see the scenery of the western heaven mystical mountain and the various Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. In the illusory state was the Dharma that he was obsessed with. After leaving the illusory state, not only would his cultivation not be affected, he would also feel that his psyche power had improved greatly. His comprehension of Dharma would also become deeper. His mana, divine arts, and cultivation would all improve. Even if the great strength came to check, he would only find that the mandala flower could magnify one's thoughts and make one's consciousness sharper. Although it also caused the external devil to become more active, it was still an excellent spiritual medicine for cultivating the 9 senses. Chapter 9:10. In Itsu City, Chunong and Mahastamaprapta Bodhisattva walked side by side. Suddenly, Mahastamaprapta Bodhisattva spoke, "Celestial Venerable, it has been 9 days since we agreed to fight. Why don't we walk around and see the effects of spreading enlightenment and eradicating the 3 pests?" Chunong pondered for a while and nodded. "Since Bodhisattva has invited me, how can I be a disappointment? Then let's go and see how they are doing." Suddenly, the Mahastamaprapta Bodhisattva smiled slyly and said, "Celestial Venerable, you should change into a disguise with me when we go to investigate secretly. Don't use your current appearance, lest you give yourself away and fail to find out the truth." When he saw Chunong nodding in agreement, he pondered for a while and smiled. We should test the fated ones with a merciful heart and see if this city's Buddha nature is deep. Then it transformed into a small sparrow and landed on the branch of a locust tree nearby. Bodhisattva, you're so mischievous. Chenong pointed at the sparrow and smiled. I can't imitate you to transform into a beast, and I think that the barbarians are too smelly, so I'll just transform into a Zhou man from Central Plains. After he finished speaking, he turned around, and all the joints in his body crackled loudly. His entire body grew taller, and he turned into an old Qin man with an unusually tall frame and a tough face. He took out a pouch and put it on his shoulder. With a bronze sword at his waist, he said to the sparrow transformed from Astamaprapta Bodhisattva, Bodhisattva, why don't you change your feathers to look better? When the sparrow heard this, it glanced at him. With a flap of its wings, it transformed into a strange bird with gorgeous feathers and a pure pearl on its head. Chenong said again, Bodhisattva, please come up to my shoulder. The strange bird with colorful feathers pounced onto his shoulder. Chenong laughed and strode toward the market in Itsu City. Along the way, he shouted, I'm a merchant from Central Plains. I collect the world's treasures and sell them. Today, I've come to Itsu City to sell the treasures of the 3 sects. These 3 treasures are not easy to obtain. If you are interested, you must make a deal with me. Chilu muddle-headedly wandered in the city, where slaves and poor people lived, avoiding the people who were chasing him. He staggered in the muddy alleys, smelling the rancid smell of cattle and horses. He also had to pay attention to the feces under his feet. He was no longer the prestigious 6th prince. Instead, he was a son who had been abandoned by his father, a prince who was not favored. Chi lay staggered towards the market. The hunger in his stomach made him delirious, and he could only concentrate on the basic visualization diagram in the all-true vein 2 phases reincarnation magic in his spiritual ocean. In the diagram, there was a Buddha sitting on Lianhua looking down at the universe, and behind him were countless tiny Sanskrit characters. It was the Buddha of infinite light. Relying on the seed of the only divine power he had visualized, the banner that was revolving around the Buddha wheel of infinite light rotated as he chanted the mantra. As it rotated, the dark golden Sanskrit characters drawn on it would glow faintly, from which came bursts of Sanskrit chanting, suppressing the fire of hunger and cooling his tired body. If I didn't have this Vajra, 7 treasures glass water visualization technique, which allows me to visualize a 7 treasures golden banner, I would have been killed long ago. Thinking of this, Chi Lei's eyes couldn't help but turn red. He thought of his brothers, who were all greedy and vicious, who wanted to kill him as soon as possible. He didn't know how many dangers they had experienced along the way. I hate him so much. Although that man from the central region killed my uncle, the golden cloth he gave me that recorded the all-true vein 2 phases reincarnation magic is a truly earth-shattering treasure. After Chi Lei had practiced this visualization technique, he realized how broad and profound this magic was. Its power was incredible, and it was definitely not the unorthodox magic that the 2 cultivators from the central region said. He thought to himself that the 2 people from the central region probably didn't have any achievements in cultivation, and that was why they passed this earth-shattering magic to him. When I master this magic, these people who bullied me and harmed me will all die miserably, miserably. At this moment, the shadows of many people flashed through his mind. The first prince and second prince who wanted to kill him, the other princes who insulted him, and the 2 people from the central region who killed his uncle, one with a hairy face and a mouth like a monkey, the other with a jade-like face like a young man, and his father who treated him with disdain. All these people must die. Father, I must let you know how big of a mistake you have made. Chi Lei roared in a low voice, and the one who stole the golden cloth that recorded the all-true vein 2 phases reincarnation magic, I will definitely find out who ordered them to do so, and I will definitely take back the all-true vein 2 phases reincarnation magic. Chi Lei's anger turned into threads of psyche power, nourishing the 7 treasures golden pagoda in his sea of consciousness, making it slightly more solid, and activating the power of the Yin demon in the heavenly demon extreme painting in Chunang's hand. A speck of light fell, and a cool and cold feeling fell from the center of his eyebrows to his chest, turning into a warm flow that nourished his entire body, suppressing the fire of hunger and giving him strength out of nowhere, just like a strong adult man. This was just an insignificant ability of the Diamond's 7 Treasures raising glass water meditation technique that Chi Lei had discovered. It could absorb his emotions, thoughts, and other impure psyche power, turning them into strength, allowing him to drag his hungry and tired body, escaping many searches. Moreover, he also knew that this 7 Treasures golden pagoda could not only absorb his psyche power, but also the psyche power of others. As long as other people had reverence, belief, hatred, and other thoughts towards him, it could be absorbed by the 7 Treasures golden pagoda in his sea of consciousness, turning them into his own psyche power, using them to activate the 7 treasures on the golden pagoda, giving it all kinds of magical powers. However, with his current psyche power, the psyche of those who chased after him, and the remaining hatred of those who lived in his shadow, it was not enough to visualize all 7 treasures. In fact, the 7 Treasures Golden Pagoda had only opened the first layer of the Dragon Elephant Vajra Pagoda, which could turn psyche power into supreme strength. With this ability, he managed to escape from the dozens of killers chasing after him until now. Thinking about this, Chi Lei couldn't help but hate the mysterious person who stole the golden cloth even more. However, he knew that with his current ability, it was far from the time to go back and take revenge. His mind was randomly recalling some things to provide psyche power to the 7 Treasures Golden Pagoda. Chi Lei gradually approached the market. His eyes flashed with an ominous glint. He had already made up his mind to cause a scene, kill a few people, steal some food, and at the same time, spread his fierce name, which would at least provide some wish power to support the 7 Treasures Golden Pagoda. However, there was a commotion in front of him. Chi Lei curiously followed, only to see a tall Qin man with a gorgeous bird standing on his shoulder, hawking his wares. The Qin man was tall, very conspicuous in the crowd. He loudly said, "I have 3 great treasures of the 3 sects, priceless, not easy to obtain, only given to those who are fated. This treasure of the first sect is a secret technique that can allow one to become immortal in God, called the Mystic Lord's 7 Chapters. Although it is incomplete, it has endless magical powers." Chapter 911, Supreme Incantation. Chi Lei sneered, "You brat, what a boastful tone you have. You really know how to boast. If there really is such a magical power, why don't you cultivate it yourself, but sell it here?" The old Qin man glanced at him and smiled. "My esteemed guest, you must be joking. How could an ordinary person be able to cultivate such a powerful divine ability and Dharma spell? I won't hide it from you. It's a coincidence that this treasure fell into my hands. Its previous owner died a violent death after reading this book. His family thought it was a bad omen, so they sold it to me. There were 3 volumes at that time, and all of them were lost. I didn't dare to read this book without permission, so I asked around and found out that it was written by the ancient immortal Lord Xian. It was a book about achieving immortality and ascending to the heavens. I even found the notes of the immortal and Qixing, the guardian of the Zhou dynasty, and repaired this scripture to 4 volumes. I read the notes of the predecessors and found out about the taboo of this scripture. This book is a book that connects to the netherworld and the gods, a book that investigates life and death. Yin Luo is afraid of it, and all ghosts and gods are jealous of it. Therefore, those who cultivate this scripture will be cursed by the ghosts and gods, and will be harmed by the netherworld. Those who read this book will be harmed by the jealousy of the ghosts and gods." Hearing what the Qin man said, the people of this time still firmly believed in the theory of ghosts and deities. There were people who were shocked and distanced themselves. Many people immediately turned and distanced themselves, not daring to provoke him. However, the old Qin man did not seem to care about the people leaving. He took out the 7 chapters of Lord Xian from his bosom. That book seemed to have a strange power, causing everyone who saw it to be gradually entranced. Their eyes were all sucked in by that black cover. When the seven-colored strange bird on his shoulder saw the scripture with the black cover, it immediately squawked and flapped its wings. The unpleasant strange sound was like an awl, piercing into the heads of the onlookers, waking them up suddenly. Noticing this strange situation, more and more people fled in panic. But Chi Lei stared at the black cover of the Lord of Xian's 7 chapters mystic scripture. It was a mass of inky black scripture. The surface of the cover looked slippery, just like human skin. It seemed to be wriggling with warmth. There was a smudge of graffiti on the cover. The graffiti was composed of black and white outlines, like two yin and yang fish chasing each other. However, on the roughly regular outlines, countless black and white shadows twisted like tentacles, giving people a bone-numbing feeling. Chi Lu stared at the scripture and roared in his heart. It's true. It's actually real. The 7 treasures golden pagoda in his sea of consciousness, the 7-layered banner that enshrined the Dharma treasure, had countless scriptures flowing on it. A pagoda with a dragon and an elephant appeared. Its brilliance increased greatly, firmly suppressing the indescribable psyche power that was invading and infecting. The banner in the 7 treasures golden pagoda flickered and produced countless Sanskrit chants, slowly purifying the psyche power that had transformed into monsters, turning them into pure psyche power of Chi Lei. Chi Lei deeply hid the trace of greed in his eyes and suddenly said coldly, "Qin person, this thing of yours is such a big disaster. Who would want to buy it? I think you don't want to sell it. You just want to find someone to be your scapegoat, to bear this disaster for you." The old Qin person only smiled and didn't answer his question. Instead, he said, "The first chapter of this treasured scripture is called Universe. Universe is the Tao. It records the mysteries of life and death, the great secret of the netherworld returning to Yang. It discusses the existence of Tao, the life and death of things. During the time of Yellow Emperor, he discussed the spells and spells of the ancient immortals, Qi Song Zi, Guang Cheng Zi, Wan Zi, Jiu Tan Xian Nu, and the others. Although most of them have been lost, Guang Chengzi and Qi Song Zi's Dao techniques, Jiu Tian Xian Nu's art of war, commanding demonic beasts, subduing heavenly demons, witchcraft, ghosts, and deities have been lost. However, there are still the secret spells of Yellow Emperor and Qi Bo, including the Resurrection Spell, and the supreme secret of immortality. The resurrection of the dead? Immortality? Chi Lei was shocked. His face was full of disbelief. Not only that, the guardian of the Zhou dynasty in the past, Lao Dan, once tasted this scripture and comprehended a celestial medicine secret spell. When consumed and recited the spell, one can enter the realm of space and see the Tao. This medicine is also included in this scripture, the Qin person said shamelessly. The strange bird whispered, "Aren't you afraid that Lao Jun will blame you for slandering us like this?" The Qin person that Chan Ong transformed into smiled and answered softly, "Bodhisattva doesn't know the inside story, so I don't blame you. What did I ever lie? When I preached Tao with Lao Dan and Yi, we talked about many secrets. Yi obtained them and recorded them in the true scripture of literature. This scripture recorded many words of the Lord of Xian's 7 chapters secret scripture. Lord of Xian means secret, Lord of Xian. Laozi. Lord of Xian means the collaboration between the Lord of Secrets and Laozi. Both the witness and the material evidence are here. How can you accuse me of being innocent?" The Lord of Mahesvara was speechless, as if he was choked by Chanong. He thought to himself, "This Lord of immeasurable heavenly Lord is full of nonsense, but it's hard to expose him. This is a skill." That Guang Chengzi was transformed from Lao Jun, who descended to the mortal world during the Yellow Emperor's era. When the two of them were discussing Tao, they talked about many secrets during the Yellow Emperor's era, so it's possible. However, this book must be written by the Lord of immeasurable heavenly Lord. He recorded the Tao discussion between Lao Jun and Guang Chengzi, and it's unknown how many harmful truths were mixed in. He even said that it was a collaboration between the two of them. When Lao Jun discussed Tao, he guided us patiently and explained the profound in simple terms. Why would he write such a Tao book full of absurd words? The crowd had heard of many strange things, and those who were able to survive until now were all bold and greedy people. When they heard the explanation from the Qin man that Chun Ong had transformed into, their faces turned red and their greed blazed. If it wasn't for the Qin man that Chun Ong had transformed into, there would probably be people who wanted to snatch the book from him. Someone immediately asked, "Qin man, you've been talking for a long time. What do you want in exchange for the treasure?" "I'll give you 1,000 pounds of copper, 3 buckets of pearls, and 50 gold to buy this book of yours." Chun Ong said, "This treasure of mine doesn't sell for a high price, only for fate. Also, I don't need money. I just want something from you." Chile had already made up his mind to snatch the book. His eyes flashed, and he asked sternly, "What do you want from us?" Chun Ong chuckled and said, "Everyone, don't worry. I don't want your soul, lifespan, good karma, good luck, limbs, emotions. I only want your life." Preposterous. Hearing this, everyone was furious. Someone immediately said, "Who is willing to sell their life to you? This life is not your fate." Chun Ong laughed and said, "This life is fate. It's the lifespan of the Yang recorded in the netherworld. It's the retribution for your previous life's good and evil deeds. It's also called fate. What I want is a life of impermanence. Anyone who is fated with this book will not have a constant fate. Everything is impermanent. Everything is impermanent, and your fate will no longer be within the 3 worlds and 5 elements. From now on, it will be difficult to stay in the world of mortals, and your fate will be like a lone star." Everyone half understood, but Chi Lei was the first to understand. He rushed to ask, "Seller, you're saying that all living beings in this world have their own fate, that everything is predestined?" Chun Ong nodded and said, "Of course. Life and death, fortune and disaster. It's all in the netherworld. It's all predestined." He took a deep look at Chi Lei and suddenly smiled. "Your fate is quite strange. You were originally a king's seed, but—" "Shut up." Chi Lei hurriedly interrupted. His eyes were red, and he said fiercely, "I don't believe in ghost fate. Even if there is a fate, it's in my own hands. A few days ago, I heard a saying, 'My fate is in my own hands, not in the hands of the heavens.'" Then he snatched the book from Chun Ang's hand and sneered, "If you want my life, then come and take it yourself." Chapter 9:12. Seeing Chi Lei leave in a hurry, 1 or 2 of the onlookers had a fierce glint in their eyes. They quietly retreated from the crowd and silently chased after Wang Chi Lei. Soon, they disappeared from Chun Ang's sight. Although they were careful, it wasn't as if they weren't noticed by others. After the 2 of them chased after them, it caused a small commotion in the crowd. The nobles who had bid earlier gave a few instructions to the guards beside them. Not long after, more people left. Seeing this, the old Qin man Chun Ong had transformed and quickly said, "Guests, don't worry. This scripture is only the first of the 3 great treasures I want to sell. There are still 2 treasures that haven't shown up yet. I also want to find a fated person." A noble's eyes flashed. He suddenly shouted, "You Qin man, your words are so unreasonable. What do you mean by fated person? Since you are selling treasures in our Yichu country, do you think we, the nobles of the Yichu country, can't buy your treasures? How can the slaves and lowly people in this city be worthy of these treasures? How can those riffraff outsiders take away the treasures from my Yichu country? If you don't give me an explanation, do you really think that the nobles of the Yichu country are easy to bully?" Chun Ong looked at him and asked with a smile, "Oh, why did this nobleman mention it? Could it be that the nobles of Quan Gao tribe are not worthy of my treasures?" The noble's eyes darkened. He coldly snorted, "When did I say such things? You Qin man, don't slander me." Chun Ong calmly said, "That fated person just now is the 6th son of the Yichu king, Prince Chi Lei. I see that you don't seem to be convinced that he has the fate to obtain the scripture. Is it because his status is low and he is not worthy of my scripture?" The noble who asked the question happened to be from the Yichu royal family. Hearing Chun Ang's question, How could he dare to admit that he had offended his backer like this? Although he had heard about Prince Chi Lei's loss of power, those local nobles were not afraid of a fallen prince. In fact, those local nobles with power were not even afraid of the Ichu king. However, he was just a palace nobleman in the capital. He did not dare to do such a thing that would be a laughingstock. He hurriedly retorted, "The prince's bloodline is noble, so he is naturally worthy of that treasure." Chun-Ong then said indifferently, "Could it be that he is some shady character who would take away the treasure from Ichu country?" The nobleman was sweating profusely as he said sternly, "Of course the prince is not a shady person. Just tell me what the treasure is. Why are you asking so many questions?" Chun-Ong was reprimanded by him, but he wasn't angry. He only smiled and said, "The second treasure is called karmic retribution. It was created with a single thought from the gods and Buddhas in heaven. As the saying goes, good and evil are rewarded." One day, in the midst of a heavy rain, a slave saw that an ant nest was about to collapse. In a moment of goodwill, he built a bamboo bridge to save it. In his next life, he was reincarnated as a prince of a Western country. He ascended the throne at the age of 20 and died at the age of 160. This is the reason why a single benevolent thought can save thousands of lives. Chun-Ong was eloquent with Lianhua. He talked about a few strange stories that happened in the jurisdiction of the Western Mount Lingshan. In the market, the poorer commoners, slaves, and poor people gradually gathered around. Even some of the older noblemen were fascinated by the story. Chun-Ong even specially told the story of two people with high positions of power who committed atrocities. In their old age, they were enlightened and were rewarded with good deeds. He also specially emphasized that the slaves and poor people who were once bullied by them were reincarnated as their relatives in the next life and tormented them. These were all taken from the karma of the hundreds of countries in India under the jurisdiction of the Western Mount Lingshan. However, those young and strong noblemen became impatient. After tolerating him for a while, they couldn't help but interrupt. "Qin people, we've heard these words of yours long ago. A few days ago, a pair of people from the Central Plains said it once in the palace. It was even better than what you said. After that, there was an old man from the West who found people in the city to spread these words every day. We've long been tired of listening to it. What's the use of the second treasure? Don't keep us in suspense." Chun-Ong laughed and said, "This second treasure is seen by the deities and Buddhas. Those who accumulate good deeds in this life can only receive good deeds in the next life. This way, all living beings don't know karma and wantonly do evil. They suffer after death and suffer in the next life. It's a pity that they don't get punished. If they cultivate virtue and accumulate good deeds, they can immediately see karma. I'm sure all living beings in this world will be devout to Buddha and actively cultivate virtue and do good deeds. Only then can the deities and Buddhas have the heart to deliver all living beings from suffering. Everywhere in this world will be a pure land. All of you will be able to escape the sea of suffering and not have to go to the land of ultimate bliss." Hearing his words, the slaves and poor people couldn't help but be shocked. Even a few old noblemen were a little shocked. They asked absent-mindedly, "Qin people, is the karma in this life as magical as you said?" Of course, Chun-Ong didn't care about the restlessness of the strange bird on his shoulder as he indifferently said, "This treasure can give you karma in your future life. It can extend your life and make everything go according to your wishes. As long as you have enough karma, there's nothing you can't do." Chun-Ong looked at the bewildered expressions of those people and said with a smile, "This treasure doesn't only belong to one person. As long as you carry out the wishes of the deities and Buddhas, it's fate. It's a treasure that everyone has. If you're unlucky, you might as well chant after me. Namo Bo Sun Doomsday Buddha." As his voice fell, an old warhound's noble who couldn't even walk impatiently clasped his hands together and said, "Namo Bo Sun Doomsday Buddha." As if it was an illusion, an infinitely dignified voice sounded in the old noble's mind. "In the doomsday, there is my Buddha to deliver all living beings." Karma in this life. Ma, and I. Pat. Me. Do you want to activate the karma system? What's that sound? That old noble was instantly shocked as he cried out in shock. Do you want to activate the karma system? The voice didn't have any intention of explaining and repeated it coldly. The old noble from the righteous canal was the uncle of the Penlu tribe's chief. His name was Izio, and he had an extremely high prestige in the tribe. If it wasn't for that, he wouldn't have lived to this age. Even so, he felt that his time was coming to an end. Even the shamans in the tribe couldn't prolong his life. The great terror between life and death made him believe in ghosts and God's day by day. He was one of the pillars that supported the shamans and the nobles. Izio was slightly agitated and said with a slightly trembling voice, "It's activate." The people around them couldn't hear the voice. Seeing Izio lose his composure, they were bewildered. However, Izio's eyes suddenly widened and his body trembled like a sieve. The nobles from the righteous canal shouted angrily, "What is this Cheen man plotting to harm boss?" Don't. Izio waved his trembling hand to stop the impulsive nobles. He stared at the void in front of him and almost couldn't bear to move his eyes away. He panted heavily as if he was about to pass out. He said to his subordinates, "I'm fine. Don't make things difficult for this gentleman Cheen." Izio looked at the 4 options on the light screen in front of him. Karma, sin, blessing, and karma. Merit was 2 small golden words followed by the number 238. Sin was 2 blood-red words followed by the number 157,286. Although Izio had never learned that strange language before, it didn't stop him from easily understanding the meaning of the words. He clicked on one of the options with his mind unskillfully. Out of his instinctive fear of the blood-red karma, he clicked on the blessing option first. He saw lifespan, merit, official position, fortune, treasure, cultivation, attribute, wish, and other major options. There were many smaller options under the major options. For example, under merit, there were karmic luck, reincarnation Tao, health, tribulation, reincarnation selection, and so on. Under luck, there were love luck, fortune luck, time luck, offspring luck, and so on. However, Izio almost couldn't wait to click on the lifespan option. The lifespan option was surprisingly simple. There was only one option, 1 year of lifespan, 100 merit points. Without any hesitation, Izik chose the option of increasing his lifespan by 1 year. His merit points instantly disappeared by 100, leaving only 138. Almost at the moment the merit points jumped, Izik felt a warm current spreading to his limbs and bones. Vaguely, the feeling of his life hanging by a thread slowly faded. Izio opened his eyes and saw everyone looking at him in shock. He stretched out his hands and saw that there was an additional trace of flesh on his bony, withered hands. A surge of energy surged out from his body that was at the end of its tether. The slave next to him said in a trembling voice, My lord, your hair." Izio grabbed a handful of hair. It was no longer withered white, but silver with a hint of light. What he couldn't see was that the roots of his hair had miraculously turned black. Izio laughed like a madman and shouted, "Yang Shou, it can really increase lifespan." After saying that, his body trembled. Ignoring the nobles who were asking him anxiously, he clicked on the lifespan option again. However, this time, the option for 1 year of lifespan was grayed out, and the number 1,000 behind it seemed to be mocking him. Izio lunged at Chun Ong crazily and screamed, "Where's my lifespan? Where's my merit points? Why did it suddenly increase? Why?" The old Chi man looked at him with a strange expression and sneered, "Do you think you can live forever just because you have 100 merit points a year? Everyone has a limit, and every year after that limit, the merit points you need will increase tenfold. Otherwise, do you want to live until the end of time? 8 to 10 years is more than enough. Besides, karma doesn't only come with good karma. Your merit points and sins in this life will also be calculated. Do you think it's a free gift from the gods?" As soon as he said that, a blood-red karma flashed on the light screen in front of Izio. Izio clicked on it and saw that there was only one option. First tribulation. Tribulation of swords and soldiers, 100 sins. There was only a countdown timer, 0, 14, 14, and the number was still getting smaller. There was a redemption, 200 merit points, option at the back, but it was grayed out. Izio instinctively felt that something was wrong. He looked at his 157,286 sins, and his body trembled. He asked with a dry voice, "Gentleman Sheen, what is the meaning of this?" Chunong glanced at him and chuckled. "Since you can enjoy the blessings of your next life in this world, the sins that you have to repay after your death will naturally have to be repaid in this world as well. However, Bosun's Doomsday Dharmakaya Buddha, Lord, is merciful and has granted you guys a chance to repent for your past mistakes. Therefore, you will have to repay your sins in stages, with each stage being a tribulation." "What kind of tribulation is that?" Izio answered with a trembling voice. "I'm suffering the tribulation of swords and soldiers." As I expected, the first tribulation is usually the tribulation of 100 sins. The karma is the lightest, and it doesn't include the tribulation of swords and soldiers, 5 elements, tongue, right and wrong. You'll have to face the tribulation after half an hour. If you are careful, it won't be hard. However, after each tribulation, there will be another one. The next tribulation will be the tribulation of 200 sins. When that time comes, even the tribulation of swords and soldiers will be in danger of dying. After that, there will be the tribulation of lightning, tribulation of wind, tribulation of fate, and other intermediate tribulations. Even if you are lucky enough to survive those intermediate tribulations, when the tribulation of 10,000 sins arrives, you'll have to face the tribulation of hell, Rakshasa, Asura, heavenly tribulation, and calamity tribulation. By then, your soul will be in agony, and you will be begging for death. When Izio heard that, his soul almost left his body. He grabbed onto Chunang's thigh and said, "Gentlemen, save me." Seeing his pitiful state, the other nobles retreated in fear. However, Chunong sneered at them. "Do you think you can escape? There is still a chance for him to pay for his sins. If you wait until you are dead, is the 18 levels of hell any better than the tribulation of heaven? The tribulation of hell is the tribulation of heaven. Even if you're captured by the emissaries of hell, you will be dragged into hell together with your body. If you don't repent, then that will be your outcome after death." Looking at the paralyzed Izio on the ground, Chunong said indifferently, "You should avoid the tribulation in half an hour first. The more powerful the tribulation is, the longer it will take for the tribulation to happen. Based on my calculations, if you avoid this tribulation, you will probably have 12 hours to accumulate merit points, pay for your sins, and avert the tribulation. But you have to think it through. Merit points have to be doubled to pay for sins. If you use the same amount of merit points, or even less, to exchange for good karma, you might be able to survive the tribulation. You have to think carefully about the secret behind it." Izio did not have the time to think. After receiving Chunang's reminder, he quickly spent 100 merit points to buy half an hour's time and saw the countdown of the tribulation of swords and soldiers hit 0. Izio was so nervous that his palms were sweating, but nothing happened after a few breaths. One of the nobles beside him laughed. "Izio, you're really as timid as a mouse." Halfway through his sentence, a spear flew at him like a bolt of lightning. Fortunately, Izio slipped and dodged the fatal spear. The spear only grazed his shoulder, but the person who laughed at him had the spear pierce through his mouth. The tip of the spear came out from the back of his head. It was obvious that he was dead. A sneer could be heard from where the spear came from. "I'll return what you gave me to me in its original form." It was the voice of Chi Lei, who had just escaped. Chapter 9:13. Chunong was unusually calm when he looked at the excited Izhua, who seemed to be holding onto a life-saving straw. "Why don't you look at your merit points and sins?" Only then did Azika react. He hurriedly opened his merit retribution system, and under the blood-red sin value was displayed as 157243. Compared to the original value of 157286, it was only 43 points lower. This fact was like a heavy hand that was tugging at Ezekiel's heart. Why is this happening? Ishwa was at a loss. Gentleman Sheen, why did my sins only decrease by 43 points after the first tribulation? Can I pay for my sins after passing the tribulation? Or do I have to use merit points to get rid of the karma? Chinong pointed at the noble's body that was nailed to the ground and smiled. Did you forget about this person? If it wasn't for your increased luck, the spear would have pierced your body, and this person wouldn't have died on the spot, right? This is your sin. This is outrageous. Ishwa was so angry that he was trembling. This person died in the hands of 6th Prince Chi Lei. What does it have to do with me? Why do you have to increase my sins? Chunong was unperturbed as he said indifferently. This person can be considered to have blocked a disaster for you, so he should pay the price. The heavens have eyes and are the fairest. They only increased your sins by 43 points, which is already considered generous. This person's sins are not small, and his fate is coming to an end. That's why the heavens used you and 6th Prince to send him to his death. Besides, this might not be a losing deal, Chinong said. Why don't you look at the merit points again? Ishwa subconsciously looked at the merit points in his system. The eye-catching golden merit points showed a shocking number of 343. Ishwa had accumulated more than 70 years of merit points, and he only had 238 merit points. It was obvious that Ishwa was a bad person. After using 100 merit points to increase his lifespan by a year and another 100 to increase his luck, he should only have 38 points left. But now, his merit points were more than 300 points. How could Ishili not be shocked? Chinong looked as if he had seen through his thoughts and leisurely said, "It seems that the sin of that bastard is indeed not light. He actually allowed you to obtain so many benefits. Unfortunately, you are only an inducement to his retribution. The 6th Prince, who personally acted, must have gained even more. Unfortunately, he left too quickly and didn't receive the treasure." Iziro licked his lips as if he had not had enough. Suddenly, he summoned one of his guards and asked, "Tulu, are you loyal to me? Are you willing to prove your loyalty?" The dark and skinny guard immediately knelt down upon hearing this and vowed solemnly, "This servant's loyalty to master can be witnessed by the gods, and I swear that I will not waver even in death." "All right then." Iziro's eyes glinted. He raised his hand and pulled out a hairpin that glowed with a faint blue light from his hair. As he helped Tulu up, he stabbed the hairpin into the right side of Tulu's neck. When everything happened, Iziro took a few steps back at lightning speed. He was so agile that he did not look like an old man in his 70s at all. "Then, you will definitely not refuse to use your life to prove your loyalty," Iziro said calmly. Tulu's eyes widened in disbelief. After struggling for 2 breaths of time, he collapsed to the ground, his face livid, and breathed his last. Iziro wiped his hands with a handkerchief and inserted the bloody hairpin back into his hair. Only then did he have the time to look at the merit retribution system. However, after a few glances, he raised his head angrily and said, "Why did my merit points only increase by 200 points and my sin increased by 150 points? I didn't even kill him with my own hands, but I still have more than this. Also, I can guarantee that Tulu is an unforgivable person. I've never seen anyone crueler, more violent, and more vicious than him. Among all my subordinates, he should be the one with the heaviest sin, far more than this dead man." Iziro pointed at the unlucky noble who was pierced through by the bone spear. Chun-Ong said indifferently, "You seem to have some misunderstanding about merit and sin. Old benefactor, is there a sin in killing? Of course there is. Killing a good person is a sin, but killing an evil person doesn't necessarily mean that there is no sin. You're guilty of stepping on an ant or pinching a bug to death. Let me tell you, there was a naughty child who killed a nest of ants with his pea, and he was sent to the 18th level of hell, because killing is the first sin. Killing, stealing, adultery, lying, and drinking are the 5 evils. Those who commit these 5 evils will be burned 5 times and tortured 3 times. Chinong told him a few stories. They were all about women who gossiped about others behind their backs. They were sent to the hell of having their tongues pulled out, and those who instigated widows to remarry were sent to the hell of scissors. Those who killed chickens, ducks, and dogs were sent to the hell of a mountain of blades, while those who disobeyed their parents were sent to the hell of a blood lake, and so on. In the 18 levels of hell, all of them had to suffer terrible torture because of some trivial matters. It made people puzzled. Was this hell a place to punish evil people and pay for their karma? Or was it a place where gods, Buddhas, and bodhisattvas took pleasure in torturing all living beings? According to this hell, the torture of evil people in the human world was far less terrifying than the torture of bodhisattvas and Buddhas. Not to mention Azairo. Even the innocent commoners and poor slaves shivered when they heard this. In the nomadic culture of the Itsu kingdom, not to mention widows remarrying, even if one's own father or brother died, one had to consider whether one could still use the stepmother or sister-in-law. The Itsu kingdom could not waste resources and people like burying the dead and keeping their chastity. Moreover, that old man could no longer work. His children were only willing to give him a piece of sheepskin before chasing him out. What's more, he sowed discord and slaughtered livestock. As a nomad, asking him not to slaughter animals was a bit too difficult for him. If that was the case, everyone here, and even everyone in the Itsu kingdom, could not avoid the 18 levels of hell. At first, the poor commoners still had the thought of enjoying a good life in the afterlife, but when they heard this, they even wanted their souls to fly away. From Chunang's words, the Tendon suspending prison, Yuan prison, and fire pit prison were all crimes committed in their lifetime and were punished after death. The Buddha of Spirited Mountain was narrow-minded. The Bodhisattva of Western Paradise was sadistic and set up prisons indiscriminately. He was violent and crazy, far more than King Zhou of Shan. The Edu prison, the tongue-pulling prison, and the skinning prison were all because of disloyalty and filial piety, and the Buddha's mouth and the snake's heart fell into this door. Those who contradicted their parents were skinned and did not starve in peace. Those who imitated the arm of a praying mantis had their tendons pulled out. Those who refused to be blindly loyal and accepted death and were tortured in every way after death. The grinding horse prison, the smashing horse prison, and the bursting cart prison were all unjust and deceitful and slandered others with sweet words. Just because of the right and wrong of the tongue, they had to use a mill to grind and a cart to crush their bones and flesh into mud. The ice prison, the skinning prison, and the intestines pulling prison were all made to bully the stupid and cause disasters to themselves. But they tied the merchants and peddlers who were short of weight to an iceberg and tore their human skin apart. The 18 levels of hell were all man-eating grounds of the deities and bodhisattvas, and the little Yinluo imps used them to show off their might. Look at the Buddha. He only sat on the skeleton Lianhua, wearing a human skin kasaya, and said that he was kind. His hands held a metal mill, and he ate people's flesh, blood, and intestines. The four great bodhisattvas released Ding Ting, and they tore off large pieces of flesh. They sat on the green lion and white elephant, and they picked their teeth with human bones. They had 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes like demons, and they looked at the 18 levels of hell for fun. The deities and deities of the 3 realms had changed their style. Every one of them looked solemn and dignified in front of people, but behind them, they had changed into the style of the evil god Cthulhu. This was not Shen Ang's empty words. Although he exaggerated, in the netherworld, the 18 levels of hell were more brutal than this. The Yinluo magistrate also judged cases like this, and that Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva might have eaten people before. Dingting and Yinluo of the 10 palaces might have had a meal together. When a monkey king went to the netherworld, he also saw the common people suffering. It was said that the netherworld rewards the good and punishes the evil. But how much evil could the common people do? But the officials and nobles of the various countries had the protection of the deities and Buddha, and even the king of hell had to give them some face. The big demon who ate humans by nature was even more unrestrained, and the netherworld could not do anything to him. In the future, when the Tangqin king went to the netherworld, There was still Judge Chui, who borrowed 20 years of his lifespan, and there were kind-hearted people who borrowed 10 treasuries of gold and silver to help him. As the saying went, the common people were like a furnace, and those with power and influence were protected by the deities and Buddha. It was the same in the heavens, the earth, and the netherworld, and within the three realms. Chapter 9:14. As a qualified mastermind and villain, how could he not research how to use the system to control person? As early as when Chun Ong first transmigrated, when he obtained his first doctorate, he discovered from the general behavior of humans that the carbon-based upright apes on Earth always thought that their behavior and thinking patterns were the result of their own free will. They always thought that their social behavior might be controlled by the system, but their spirit must be free. The extreme manifestation of this kind of stupidity was the MLM personnel who endured the difficult conditions in a small rented house, attended classes every day, and played games. More commonly, there were religious believers who studied various scriptures, prayed every day, and did activities in religious places. If you added the numbers of the two together, you would be surprised to find that the number of upright apes who were controlled but still thought that their spirit was free and their faith was noble accounted for 70% of the entire planet. This made the extreme manifestation of stupidity not seem so stupid. After all, as a kind of social animal, human genetic instincts and social requirements all told themselves that conformity was the safest and that it was the safest to be in a crowd. This was also a way to control them mentally. It told them that they were gregarious and that they had to be gregarious. Those ignorant people would spontaneously mutate themselves and try to blend into the crowd. Therefore, whether it was MLM or missionary work, the basic requirement was a relatively closed, small society where the behavior was different and converged. For example, the closed-door lectures of MLM, the missionary sites, and rituals of religion. The nature of brainwashing of the two was the contrast of characteristics. Therefore, if Chun Ong needed to create a new religion in modern society, then MLM personnel would undoubtedly be the focus of development. Generalizing this general psychological law, it was not difficult at all to make a person's behavior and psychology be controlled by the system and make them think that they were free, but they did not know that their every move was under the control of the mastermind behind the scenes, like a puppet on a string. To be precise, it was very easy. The merit retribution system that Chun Ong casually created was one of the models. Merit is merit, and sin is sin. On the surface, Chun Ong could not be any more honest. He said bluntly, "You have a wrong understanding. You think that getting rid of those who have sinned is doing merit." Ezilio was surprised. "Is there something wrong?" "Of course not." Chun Ong said forcefully, "Let me ask you, if one of your subordinates was greedy for your money and committed a great crime, and your other subordinate killed him, would you be happy?" Ijikwa came to a sudden realization. A person who acts on his own. Yes. Chun Ong smiled and said, "You will also be unhappy, and you will not feel that the subordinate who killed the person has done a meritorious deed. Rewards and punishments come from above, not from below. That sinful person will naturally receive retribution from the deities and Buddhas. This is the authority of the deities and Buddhas. How can karma be taken care of by you? How can you interfere in a great matter like circulating samsara and judging good and evil? Could it be that you still think you're innocent and meritorious?" Chun Ong mocked. "Then why would there be merit?" Ijikwa was confused. Chun Ong laughed and said, "That was deities and Buddhas borrowing your hand to complete their retribution, to let him have his evil retribution. You see, his sins are grave, deities and Buddhas borrowing your hand to carry out the tribulation of human, to let him die under the tribulation of saber and weapon. You are part of the retribution, therefore you should have good karma. Just like the subordinate who killed the person, if he had asked for your permission and followed your orders to kill, he would naturally be meritorious. This is the difference between being ordered and not ordered. For example, if you kill a sinner for justice, you will naturally have to suffer in hell and be punished for your sin of killing. But if you follow the doctrine and kill those mentioned in the scriptures, such as coffee and the enemy of Buddha, you will naturally ascend to the pure land of heaven and gain great merit. Even though that sinner wasn't the enemy of the Buddha, you have the current world karma system with you. The evil person that you killed must have been Bo's son. The Dharmakaya Buddha Lord had made use of your hands to send down the current world karma, so that those evil people would receive their retribution. Look, shouldn't the merit of rewarding the good and punishing the evil in the world belong to Bo's son? Ijikwa understood immediately and said, "As for me, although I'm guilty of killing, I can also receive a bit of merit from Boshuan because of his kindness. This merit is not because I killed a sinner, but because I followed the retribution and was saved by Boshuan's power of will. Apart from the sin of killing, he saved me a bit of merit." "You're quite perceptive." Chenong smiled. "You are guilty of killing, and Boshuan sent out the retribution to punish the sinners in the netherworld. It is a boundless merit. Boshuan used you to send out the retribution, so he lent you a bit of merit to redeem your karma. But you guys don't know the redemption from Boshuan. How sad. You will fall into hell sooner or later." Ijikwa muttered, "What kind of perceptive is that? Don't tribal chiefs and shamans all do the same? I heard that the Qin people of the Eastlands have laws that kill and kill. Those who kill naturally have to be executed as well. Only by following the orders of the Qin king and executing people according to the law. Not only are they not guilty, they are also meritorious. Therefore, Boshuan, the Dharma limitless Buddha, is like the Qin king of the Eastlands. But the right of retribution is in the hands of Boshuan." "Of course." Chenang's face turned solemn. "Buddha Boshuan upholds justice for all. Naturally, only Buddha Boshuan can uphold justice. The justice that others uphold isn't justice because Buddha Boshuan says that whoever is righteous is righteous. If you want to do it before Boshuan, then you have to experience his iron fist of justice. The secret lies in the system. The maintenance of the system lies in violence. And violence is when the deities, Buddhas, demons try to go against the system." Chunong squeezed his right hand and crushed a nut. He placed the nut into his mouth and chewed carefully. Ijikwa shuddered. Chunong ate the nut and continued, "If there's only violence and no system is established, then you are a demon and can't do justice." "So," Chunong asked, "Old benefactor, do you know what merit is?" Iziro said sincerely, "Buddha Boshuan's merit of delivering all living beings from suffering and transcending all living beings is merit." He bowed his old head deeply to show his submission. "Namo Boshuan, the Dharma limitless Buddha," Chenong chanted. Chapter 9:15. A thin figure dressed in linen took advantage of the darkening sky to sneak down Deer Terrace Pavilion. He followed the inconspicuous corners of Deer Terrace Pavilion's tall pavilion and carefully avoided the patrolling guards as he walked out of the palace. When he reached a place where the guards couldn't see him, he lifted his skirt and ran forward with his bare feet. In fact, it was a luxury for a slave to even run. There was no thick layer of humus like the deciduous forest, and there was no soft soil like the plains. In the royal palace's garden, it was filled with shrubs, protruding tree roots, and stones. If he ran a bit faster, he would hurt his feet. Needless to say, in order to prevent slaves and untouchables from sneaking into the garden, the king of Righteous Canal ordered people to scatter a lot of sharp gravel here. Anyway, the nobles and guards were wearing shoes made of felt, which were warm and comfortable. They could run freely on the gravel ground, catching up with slaves who could not run fast like the wind and chopping off their heads. But that figure did not seem to care about the stones that could hurt his feet. He staggered as he ran and found a hidden place. There was already a war houndsman wearing a guard's uniform waiting there. When the guard saw that figure, he quickly came forward and said in a low voice, "Did you bring it out?" That thin slave bowed and revealed a fawning expression as he said, "I brought it." His Majesty ordered people to keep a tight watch on them. I had to bribe the guards on duty to get a few of them. They are all freshly picked and dried goods, not the inferior goods that were dropped on the ground and withered to fool you. Take it out for me to see." The guard berated, Seeing his hesitation, he became even more strict. The skinny slave had no choice but to take out the thing wrapped in white cloth from his bosom. It was a dark, golden, air-dried datura flower that had shrunk into a ball. It looked like scattered gold grains piled up together, emitting a fragrant aroma. The guard greedily moved in front of the datura flower and took a deep breath. The skinny slave looked distressed as he watched from the side. It was as if this bite had sucked away a millet's weight, but he did not dare to stop it. However, the guard knew the importance of this matter and quickly wrapped it up again. He weighed the dried datura flower in his hand and sternly said, "Why is there so little this time? It's not even half a caddy. If this datura flower is dried, it would weigh about 2 caddies. Don't tell me you only collected 120 datura flowers in the past few days. Tell me, did you hide it?" This servant wouldn't dare. That skinny little slave's legs softened when she heard it, said in terror, "This servant will never dare to disobey the great shaman's orders. Just that his majesty is very strict. Ordered the close guards to make a list of those datura flowers. Every single datura flower that blooms are all numbered. Just a few days ago, his majesty executed a servant girl for stealing flowers. Now, all the datura flowers are under the control of the palace guards. We have to curry favor with them and bribe them to hide some. We don't dare to steal too much of each stalk. We only pick the ones that slip through the gaps between the fingers of the noble guards." "That fake king is actually so scheming?" the guard said in shock and anger. The matter of smuggling datura flowers from the palace was extremely important. It concerned the great shaman's high regard for him. If this line was tightened, then his future would not be optimistic in the eyes of the great shaman. How could he stand out then? The slave at the side said hatefully, "It's all that merchant's suggestion. He asked his majesty for the right to monopolize all the datura flowers in Deer Terrace Pavilion and only allow him to sell them. His majesty was rather shaken and is still considering." The guard sneered when he heard that. These people from the Central Plains will definitely not have an easy time after the great shaman takes the throne. After putting away the dried datura flowers wrapped in white cloth, the guard lowered his head and made a few turns, then went around the palace and went straight to a mansion in the city. After entering the mansion, he handed the things to a shaman and left. That shaman carefully carried the things to the outside of a main hall. Great Shaman Zhu Yin looked at a sorcerer apprentice with a gloomy expression. He poured the dark gold dried datura flowers in a white handkerchief into a golden bottle. The bottle was already half full. The datura flowers inside were like scattered gold, emitting an enchanting dark gold brilliance. Zhu Yin held the golden bottle in his hand and looked at the grand shamans below who were staring greedily at the golden bottle. He laughed angrily and said, "Are you all satisfied with just this bit of witch medicine?" He said sternly, "That fake king has thousands of times more datura witch medicine than this. Are we going to be satisfied with just picking up this bit that he left behind and fight over it like dogs?" Great Shaman Zhu Yin reached in and grabbed a handful of scattered gold. He used a little force in his hand and crushed the withered datura flowers that had shrunk to the size of soybeans into powder. He brought it to his nose and took a deep breath. The dark gold fine powder was sucked into his nose. After a few breaths, Great Shaman Zhu Yan's gaze changed. His murky and dim eyes suddenly brightened, as if a powerful thought had been injected into them. He felt that his telegnosis, which had been dulled by witchcraft, ghosts, darkness, and poison, had become sharp again. His dry and loose skin became sensitive, and his consciousness became clear and scattered. "It's really a magical medicine." Great Shaman Zhu Yin exclaimed. "The ancestors' spirits can use this to communicate with us. It can help us listen and see the traces of the ghosts and gods that are everywhere. With their power, it can make our spiritual sense sharper and sink into the spiritual realm to come into contact with those great, immortal powers. We can see the spirits, the ghosts, and gods." Zhu Yin sighed and said, "That's why you are so eager and greedy to get your hands on this kind of medicine. You want to concoct it into a medicine that can help you break through to the next level, please the gods, and increase your power. This kind of medicine, when used by wizards, can communicate with the ghosts and gods. When used by warriors, they will become stronger and braver. Even those slaves will become smarter when they work. It can increase our intelligence and make us more sensitive to the will of the ghosts and gods. It can even make warriors more agile and powerful, replenishing their energy and stamina. But this kind of natural treasure, Great Shaman Zhu Yin said angrily, it's actually in the hands of those idiots and trash from the Quan Gao family, in the hands of that fake king of Ichu clan. That fake king even used a stove to bake piles of spirit incense in one of the main halls of the royal palace, letting the fragrance of Dachira's scent fill the entire hall. Together with those stupid, rotten nobles, they would have fun in the main hall, enjoying themselves to their heart's content. It's called the Meeting of Bliss. This helped Ichu King to win over many influential people. Another grand shaman added, many clans and nobles are no longer interested in their ancestors and the ghosts and gods. Some nobles who have been to the Meeting of Bliss told me that only by smelling the fragrance of the pure land of bliss and enjoying themselves to their heart's content would they be able to live their lives as nobles. Otherwise, what's the point of living like those slaves and lowly people? And the nobles who have smelled the mandala fragrance, the heavenly flower fragrance from the pure land of bliss, have no doubts about the pure land of bliss. Even a monk who claims that the spirited mountains, gods, and Buddhas created 3 pure lands that aren't inferior to the pure land of bliss can't convince anyone. Yesterday, he even claimed that his pure land of Amitabha and pure land of bliss also had the infinite Dachira scent. Another grand shaman said, "Ha ha." His words caused a wave of sarcastic laughter in this secret chamber. Zhu Yin sneered and said, "You mean that liar who held a bottle and showed everyone his pure land of bliss? Do you think anyone would believe his nonsense?" As soon as Zhu Yan's voice fell, all the laughter stopped immediately. The grand shamans became silent. Zhu Yin laughed a few times and then snorted coldly. There are still many who believe in it. They don't believe in their ancestors and the ghosts and gods, but they believe in the nonsense of a barbarian from the Guifang West. He talked about the so-called reincarnation and the pure land of bliss in detail, even if these things were just copied by that barbarian a few days ago. Even if he said this today, he would slap his own mouth tomorrow and change his words. But there are still people who believe in him. They believe without a doubt. Maybe we can also fabricate our own pure land, a grand shaman said. He plucked up the courage to make this suggestion, expecting to receive some rebuttal from the grand sorcerers. But surprisingly, none of the grand sorcerers spoke. So, after this silent encouragement, the secret chamber began to discuss in whispers how to adapt this saying. Zhu Yin let out a silent sigh. How could he not know that he was digging up his own foundation? But after consuming the Dachira, Zhu Yin believed deeply in the pure land of bliss where the smallpox grew. He also started to believe in the pure land of bliss, the endless bliss. If there was no pure land of bliss, how would there be such a strange flower like the Dachira? The aristocrats of Ichu country were shamans. They were all addicted to the unrestrained, carefree happiness after consuming the Dachira. Hence, they yearned for the pure land of bliss where this strange flower grew. Since the pure land of bliss existed, then, after death, who would not want to enter the pure land of bliss and enjoy the endless bliss? This was the reason why the few grand shamans did not dare to obstruct the pure land of bliss. They did not dare to offend the Amitabha Buddha who opened up the pure land of bliss. They too had to die. In the ultimate picture of bliss, Chenong looked at the few souls that had just floated over. These were some of the old aristocrats of Ichu City. Every winter was the time when the old people passed through a critical period. Winter was the time when the vitality was restrained and the blood was dormant. Therefore, passing through the winter was like passing a test. After the winter, when the flowers bloomed and the vitality sprouted, most of the old people who were physically old and mentally weak could survive until the next winter. These aristocrats were the old people who could not survive. Thanks to the overflow of the Dachira in Ichu City, they all bid farewell to the world without pain. They had entered a real hell. Transfer these souls to world number 76 and prepare for the river Styx corruption experiment. Chunong smiled slightly, revealing a gentle smile that was comparable to the smile that medical students showed to rabbits and mice. It's just the beginning. There are too few experimental resources. Too few. When the Pure Land sect flourishes and everyone chants the name of Buddha and enters the Pure Land of bliss, my tens of thousands of experimental projects can be started. Chinong sighed and said, "The quality of these souls that consumed the Dachira is too poor. I can only use them for the river Styx corruption experiment to study the ecology of the soul after the corruption of the soul." Chapter 9:16. I've made it clear enough for the second treasure. Chun Ong said, "Everyone is fated with this treasure. If you want to fight for it, you only need to chant Namo Paisun Mo Fa Wang Buddha. All merit and karmic retribution will be reaped by all of you." Iji's expression flickered with uncertainty. For a moment, the spectators couldn't tell if this was a blessing or a curse. It was like a hot potato. Before they could make up their minds, Chinong said indifferently, "The treasures of the first two sects already have owners. Now, there's only the last one left, and it's fated. This treasure is a spiritual mountain that is worshipped by dozens of countries in a Paragodania province. It's called the Vajrawheel Mountain, and there's a divine bird on the mountain called the Garuda. The Garuda has a golden body with colorful feathers and a good luck pearl on its head. Its cries are sorrowful, and it eats a poison dragon king and 500 poison dragons every day. Its body is covered in poisonous gas, and only the good luck pearl on its head can ward off the poison. Hunters often lure the Garuda to the Vajrawheel Mountain and cut off its good luck pearl. It can ward off evil and make poison immune. It's considered a treasure." Hearing Chun Ang's explanation, everyone looked at the strange bird on Chun Ang's shoulder. It had a golden body with colorful feathers and a green tumor on its head. Wasn't this the Garuda that Chinong described? When Chinong saw how everyone was looking at him, he smiled faintly. Then he looked at the Garuda on his shoulder and said, "That's right. The third sex treasure is none other than this Garuda on my shoulder. The good luck pearl on its head has endless uses. Don't think that it's just a tumor right now. Once it's cut off, it can prolong one's life. If one doesn't want to use it, one can moisturize it with warm water. In just a few minutes, the flesh will turn into a jade-like pearl that can ward off all poisons." The Mahastemaprapta Bodhisattva on Chun Ang's shoulder cursed in his heart, "What a good, boundless heavenly lord. So he wanted to sell me out long ago. No wonder he told me to look better." The strange bird that the Mahastemaprapta Bodhisattva had transformed into his naturally no ordinary creature. It was the Garuda bird that Chinong had mentioned. Because the bird was one of the 8 Dharma protectors of the Buddha, it naturally chose this form. It did not expect that Chinong would take the opportunity to betray it. The sarcoma on its head was indeed a wishful pearl, a Buddhist treasure. The Garuda bird fed on the poisonous dragons. When it was about to die, the dragons spat out their poison and it could no longer eat it. So it flew up and down 7 times until it reached the peak of the Vajrawheel and died. Because it had fed on dragons for its entire life, its body had accumulated a lot of poisonous gas, and when it died, the poison caused it to self-immolate, leaving behind only a pure azure-glazed heart. This heart was the Rui Pearl. Ordinary people would not be able to imagine that the Garuda bird's heart was different from other birds. It was not on its chest, but on its head. It was like a sarcoma, pulsating constantly. It was hard to notice without careful observation. What made the Mahastemaprapta Bodhisattva helpless was that the Garuda bird that it had transformed into was a Garuda king known as the Great Mighty Garuda King. Together with Avalokitesvara, Ksitigarbha, and Samantabhadra, they were the 4 incarnations of the Garuda king that led one of the 8 Dharma protectors, the Garuda tribe. Therefore, the Rui pearl on its head was even more extraordinary. It was a Buddhist treasure that could bring the dead back to life and increase one's magical power. It was loved by the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and deities. If that was the case, then so be it. As one of the few Bodhisattvas of Mount Lingshan, the Mahastemaprapta Bodhisattva would not be stingy with a Rui pearl. However, the Garuda bird was a Buddhist bird. It was different from the other birds and beasts. It was born with a Buddhist nature and would not be tainted by lust. Therefore, in order to conceive offspring, it needed another Garuda bird as its mate to peck out the heart from the top of its head and place it into its belly. Only then could it give birth to a young bird. When the Garuda bird lost its heart, it found a mate to share its heart with. Within 7 days, a new heart grew. Garuda's body was poisoned, and after losing his mind for 7 days, he needed a mate to help him suppress it with his own rui bead. At this time, the 2 divine birds were in danger of the poison acting up, so it was extremely difficult for these divine birds to give birth. Now, Chunang's words were filled with malicious intent when he mentioned how precious the pearl on the head of the Garuda king's head was. If the crown on his head was cut off and placed in water to condense into a rui pearl, then it would be fine. If there really was a crazy person who believed the nonsense that the immeasurable heavenly venerable made up and swallowed the heart crown before his flesh and blood melted, the crown would turn into a young Garuda egg when it came into contact with his flesh and blood. Wasn't this the same as having a cheap son at most? Those who coveted the divine bird's blood and blood to prolong their lives were mostly old and ugly noblemen. If people knew that the Garuda king that he transformed from the Garuda king had a little bird with a filthy, greedy, and stupid old man, this would make the celestials, dragons, yakshas, and Granny Chien on Spirited Mountain laugh until the end of eternity. When the Garuda king thought of this terrifying possibility, it immediately flapped its wings and fled. Unexpectedly, just as it was about to flap its wings, Chunong grabbed it with one hand and said with a smile, "Bodhisattva, why are you running? It's not like I'm going to eat you. Didn't we agree to deliver all living beings from suffering together?" Chunong held the strange bird that was transformed from the Garuda king and shouted, "I'm selling the strange bird of the western regions. Garuda, I'm selling it cheap. I'm selling it cheap. The pearl on its head, it can prolong one's life and make one immortal." Under the urgent situation, the Garuda king could only escape from the Saraira and fly towards Spirited Mountain in a beam of light. Chunong seemed to have forgotten about the beam of light that went far away and only smiled mysteriously. The Spirited Mountain in the western heaven was infinitely beautiful. The great thunderous temple was filled with auspicious clouds, and rainbow lights embraced the world. The common mystical ape presented fruits, the deer held flowers, the green swan danced, the colorful phoenix cried, the spirit turtle held longevity, and the crane caught Ganoderma. They enjoyed the Pure Land Nun Garden and enjoyed the Dragon Palace Dharma Realm. Flowers bloomed every day and fruits ripened every now and then. They practiced tranquility and returned to nature, neither dying nor growing, neither increasing nor decreasing. Haze drifted in and out, neither cold nor heat intruded and did not remember the year. On this day, the 4 bodhisattvas, Guan Yin, Samantabhadra, Manjushri, and Ksitigarbha were touring Bodhi Garden in the Pure Land Nun Garden and observing the situation of the 3 realms. Guan Yin Bodhisattva said, "A few days ago, when that monkey was causing trouble, the immeasurable heavenly Lord threw a white chess piece, and it landed on Loja Mountain. It turned into a chess piece island and suppressed my bottle. Now that the demon emperor equal to heaven has returned, and the matter of the cloudy palace of the Golden Arches is settled, the immeasurable heavenly Lord is not letting me out." Manjushri smiled and said, "It was so noisy that day. The Buddha ordered the 18 arhats to bring 500 arhats to Nanjan State in the east. When they passed by Mount Zhongnan, they fell into the chess game between the immeasurable heavenly Lord and Lao Jun. We went to rescue them, but were beaten up by that bastard. The poor Masthemaprapta's bottle was almost knocked off, and even his hair was in a mess after he escaped. The immeasurable heavenly Lord trapped us for 500 years. If it wasn't for the revered one who rescued us from 500 years later, today would be the end of the Eastern Han dynasty." The 4 bodhisattvas laughed, and Ksitigarbha said, "I wonder where the Masthemaprapta bodhisattva is. I can't see him today." Chapter 9:17. The 4 bodhisattvas talked about the major events that happened in the 3 realms during this period of time. Just as they were about to investigate the three realms, they saw a ray of five-colored light entering the spirited mountain and landing in the Great Lane Temple. Bodhisattva Guanyin saw it and said in surprise, "Isn't that the Mahastamaprapta's Sarira light? Why is he here instead of fighting the immeasurable heavenly Lord?" Just as the ray of light was about to land, it saw the boundless light above the four bodhisattvas in the sky above the lotus garden. It turned and landed on the four bodhisattvas. The ray of light turned into a glazed sarira, and the voice of the Mahastamaprapta Bodhisattva could be heard. "When I was fighting the immeasurable heavenly Lord, I was ambushed by him. Please help me, brothers." Manjushri and Samantabhadra looked at each other. Guanyin Bodhisattva was the calmest and asked, "Fellow Taoist Mahastamaprapta, there is no need to panic. Quickly tell us the truth." The Mahastamaprapta Bodhisattva then explained how Chun Ong tricked him into transforming into the Garuda bird and imprisoned him. After understanding the whole story, Ksitigarbha said, "The immeasurable heavenly Lord's power is amazing, but he is not a good person. He likes to bully the weak and the strong. He is plotting against fellow Taoist Mahastamaprapta to find him a son to create a troublesome karma." Manjushri said, "We must not let him plot against fellow Taoist Mahastamaprapta." Guanyin pondered a little more and said, "The boundless heavenly Lord and the Taishang Laojun are the key figures in the Buddha's plan to establish the Mahayana sect in the next cataclysm. The Buddha made a bet with them to give up one of their incarnations and join the Buddha as the Lord of the Pure Land of ultimate bliss, Amitabha. Initially, Laojun agreed to transform into a Buddha and become the venerable Amitabha. However, he did not want the immeasurable heavenly Lord to descend together with him. Hence, he split the venerable Amitabha into two, the Buddha of infinite light, the Buddha of infinite longevity, and the Buddha of Amitabha. He brought a supreme devil realm with him. Not long ago, he made a 48 great vow to turn the devil realm into a pure land of bliss. There are countless heavenly devils, secret devils, and other devils. There are billions of living beings within. This demonic realm is the primordial heavenly demon realm. It is the key to opening the pure land of ultimate bliss master. It is 100 times more suitable than the pure land of ultimate bliss master. It could be another spiritual mountain and the foundation of the sect. Compared to being plotted against by Mahastamaprapta, this is more important. We must not disturb the world Lord's master's plan. The four bodhisattvas looked left and right and looked at each other. They nodded and said, "We will definitely not ruin the great plan of the revered one of the world. Then let's go and meet that immeasurable heavenly Lord," Guanyin Bodhisattva said with a smile. After that, the four bodhisattva followed the relic of Mahastamaprapta Bodhisattva to the lower realm of Ichu country. They landed on the streets of Ichu city. Bodhisattva transformed into a poor girl. Manjushri transformed into a white-browed old man. Ksitigarbha transformed into a black-faced man, and Samantabhadra transformed into an ascetic monk. In the market, Chun Ong was still hawking 500 gold once. Just 500 gold, and this noble can take away this divine bird from the West. You can't buy health, you can't buy longevity, you can't buy supernatural powers. 500 gold. Just 500 gold, and you want him to take away this divine Garuda? There's a rui bead on its head. Eat it, and you can live forever. Are you going to let it go just like that? This noble has made a bid. 800 gold pieces. 800 gold pieces for an 8-foot-tall red coral. This noble has doubled the price. It seems that there is still room for the price to rise. Even if you can't use it, can't your family and other nobles who are not here use it? Give away the divine bird. Make friends with nobles, get promoted, and get rich. You can multiply your capital by a few times. 1,000 gold. This noble has made a bid of 1,000 gold. Chun Ong screamed. Being rich is fated. Being rich is great. You can even hire the king of hell if you have money. You can do whatever you want. Bodhisattva of Bodhisattva of Bodhisattva was dressed in plain clothes. She was about 16 years old and had a slender figure. She bowed to Chenong and said, "I have a merciful heart. I'm willing to redeem this divine bird and release it to heaven and earth." Chenang's expression changed immediately. He sneered, "How much is a gene of merciful heart? Being merciful is a thought that illuminates the universe. My heart weighs 8 taels and 7 taels, but it can contain the universe and hold all sentient beings. I'm willing to exchange one heart for another. Exchange my heart for another heart." The poor girl bowed and said, "Being merciful has boundless merits. I'll exchange 10 million merits for one gene." Chenong snorted, I won't exchange. Being merciful is his character. Other people's gold is not worth my money. Even if I have boundless merits, it's not as good as having a full stomach. I've always taken from this life. Why do I have to ask about the next life?" Samantabhadra of Bodhisattva also joined in the fun and said, "This item is very good. I'm willing to exchange a country's land for it." "Monk," Chenong said lightly, "you are poor and have nothing on you. Where does a country's land come from?" The noble who offered 1,000 gold also came back to his senses and said angrily, "Where did this beggar come from? How dare he make trouble here?" He then turned to Chenong and said, "You said that the highest bidder wins. You can't go back on your words. Why do you care about these people who bid randomly? If no one offers a higher price than me, you should drop the hammer." This noble is right. Chenong turned his head and asked, "Monk, is your country's land worth 1,000 gold?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva said, "My country's land has 36 cities and 290,000 people. It's priceless. If you get it, you could become a feudal lord." The noble sneered, "Where did this beggar come from to talk nonsense here? Where did you get the country's land to exchange for?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva said, "I begged for alms. The king of the Dahuai kingdom is kind and generous. When he heard that I wanted to beg for some money in exchange for releasing this bird, he gave me a Kasaya's land." "A Kasaya's land?" The noble laughed and said, "He gave you a Kasaya's land, and you claim to have a country? And where did the Dahuai kingdom come from? Where is your Kasaya's land?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva took off the Kasaya and threw it to the side. The Kasaya fluttered and landed under a big pagoda tree, covering its roots. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva pointed there and said, "That's the Kasaya's land that the Dahuai kingdom gave me, a country that they gave me." The noble from the Ichu kingdom beside him said angrily, "This is the Ichu city of the Ichu kingdom. This land also belongs to the Ichu kingdom. Where did the Dahuai kingdom give you this piece of land? And even if this piece of land is yours, it's not worth 1,000 gold." Samantabhadra Bodhisattva put his palms together and picked up the Kasaya. He pointed his right hand down on the ground and raised his finger in front of everyone. He said, "This is the king of the Dahuai kingdom. He lived here for 39 generations before your Ichu kingdom was founded, so this land should belong to the Dahuai kingdom." Everyone saw that his hand was empty, but upon closer inspection, they saw that there was a big-bellied ant on Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's finger. It was an ant queen. Looking at the land covered by the Kasaya, there were countless black dots crawling around. They could even see the mouths of a few ant nests. Chapter 918. The nobleman flew into a rage and scolded. Where did this arrogant person come from? What's he talking about? What ant people of the locust tree kingdom? What 36 cities? A country's land? He's talking nonsense and trying to cheat me of my treasures. He then said to his guards, "Chase him out of the city." Chenong stopped him with a smile. "Wait, let me ask him first." He asked Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, "Monk, let's not talk about whether the land of the locust tree kingdom is worth 1,000 gold coins. Let's talk about how the queen of the locust tree kingdom provided you with a country's land in exchange for my Garuda bird. Do you have the letter of credence and seal as proof? Otherwise, how can I believe you without proof?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva smiled. "The people of the locust tree kingdom are willing to be the witness. Mister, please take a look." Samantabhadra Bodhisattva pointed to the ground. Many ants swarmed out of the ant nest and formed patterns on the ground. They looked like words. It was the letter of credence for borrowing the land and Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. Chin Ong squatted down and looked at it carefully before nodding. That's what you said. If that's the case, the documents are complete and the procedures are proper. Monk, you can make a balance sheet to count the movable and immovable properties of the Locust Tree Kingdom, as well as the debts and bad debts. Allow me to evaluate it carefully and then determine the total value, Chinong said seriously. At this moment, the aristocrat who had been angered to the point of laughing by the two's preposterous actions suddenly became infuriated. He suddenly snatched a water pouch from the waist of the bodyguard behind him and came to the big locust tree. He poured the liquor in the pouch down, drowning the ant nest. Countless ants died in the blink of an eye. Ha ha! The nobleman laughed. Where is your locust tree kingdom now? Disaster fell from the sky, and, unfortunately, the kingdom was destroyed. Chunong squatted down and looked at it carefully again before raising his head and saying, Monk, your mortgage was destroyed due to the invasion of foreign enemies. The kingdom was invaded by foreign enemies and was destroyed. It was a natural disaster. Therefore, the mortgage was invalid. Although the land of the kingdom still exists, the sovereignty is unclear. Forgive me for not being able to mortgage it. My sins, my sins. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva put his palms together. He couldn't bear to close his eyes and said, All sins are mine. He no longer paid attention to them and sat down under the big locust tree. He placed the queen ant under the tree and silently helped the people of the ant country to cross over. Chinong looked at the nobleman with pity and shouted proudly, Anyone else? Is there anyone who dares to bid against me? The Samantabhadra Bodhisattva chanted for a while, and the wine stains on the ground slowly evaporated. Not long after, the ground was completely dry. The drowned ants flicked their antennae and came back to life. The nobleman was still unaware of this and was ready to catch the Garuda. At this moment, he was suddenly surrounded by a group of soldiers clad in black armor. There were hundreds of them. The nobleman was so frightened that he didn't dare to resist. He heard the general say, Honored guests, our queen invites you. They led the group forward for a while and saw a forest in front of them. After entering the forest, it suddenly widened. There was a huge mountain pass in front of them. After going over the mountain pass, they saw a big city in the mountain. The city was orderly, and there was an endless stream of people coming and going. They walked all the way to the palace. There were farmers, peddlers, taverns, and patrolling soldiers. However, the people in this country were quite strange. They had two fleshy horns on their foreheads and temples. The palace was extremely tall and magnificent. After they were brought here, they waited in the main hall. After a while, a woman taller than the average person came out from the back of the hall. Seeing that the people around her were very respectful, they guessed that she was the queen of this country. Other than a few people who were muddle-headed from the shock, the rest of them knew what was going on. The queen invited them to take a seat. She covered her mouth and laughed. Masters, you are right. This is the Dahuai country. She then turned to the nobleman from the righteous canal and shouted coldly, How can you be so evil? My country is in your country, and we have always minded our own business. We have never offended your country. Just because of a little gossip, you want to drown the people of my country. How evil! It makes my hair stand on end. If it wasn't for the Daxing holy monk who couldn't bear to see my country in trouble and lent a helping hand, wouldn't my people have died in vain? The nobleman was so scared that he couldn't speak. He couldn't refute. He heard the queen snorting coldly. You killed the people of my country. How can I forgive you? Take them to the court and execute them to pay for the lives of the people of the Dahuai country. The general of the ants immediately took them down and scolded. Call them those who died because of you. I will hammer and strangle you to death. The nobleman was terrified. Seeing the indifference in Chun Ang's eyes and Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's expression, he quickly begged, Holy monk, spare me, spare me. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva had no choice but to persuade her, My queen, killing is the first of the 10 evils. Even if this person deserves retribution, his anger was caused by me, which led to this great crime. I have said before that all sins are mine. This person has offended the law, and I am willing to atone for it with my body. The queen of the Dahuai country turned around and said, Master, you save hundreds of thousands of people in my country. If it wasn't for you, we would be like dust. Even if you kill countless of us, who cares? Not to mention that we are going to kill and plunder the murderer. Since the Daxing holy monk can't bear to do it, I will spare him from death. However, he can be spared from death, but he can't escape punishment. He still has to be imprisoned for 3 days to comfort the people of the Dahuai country. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva and the queen talked for a while more before turning to Chenong and saying, Almsgiver, the queen of the Dahuai country is still willing to abide by the previous agreement and give me this country. I wonder if you are willing to make a deal? Chenong smiled and said, The monk has already imprisoned my client, so what can I do even if I am not willing? He looked around again and smiled. The monk's supernatural power of the Buddhist country in the palm and the world in the sleeve is really not bad. You can create a country in a mustard seed, and it is so real. You can enlighten the intelligence of an ant and make it shed its insect nature to become a living creature with spirit. This country is no less than the righteous canal country, and its value is immeasurable, far exceeding 1,000 gold pieces. Chenong looked at Samantabhadra Bodhisattva with a faint smile and said, If the monk is still willing to make a deal, I am naturally willing to make a deal. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva smiled and said, This deal only involves the land of this country. There are countless living creatures in it, and there is no reason for them to give me anything, so they are free to come and go. I know. Chenong handed the Garuda king to Samantabhadra. He looked at the queen of the ant country and said, Pitiful worm, you have nothing and are only molded by others. You were originally an ignorant ant, but because Samantabhadra Bodhisattva wanted to transform the land of a country to make a deal with me, you were enlightened with intelligence. You seem to have gained great benefits, but you don't know that all your character and cognition have been molded. Every word and action is based on the original self that Samantabhadra Bodhisattva has molded. Pitiful, pitiful. Chenong sighed and said, Since I have gotten your land, I will give you another choice. As soon as he finished, a crisp bell rang in the ears of the queen of the ant country. Ding! The immeasurable heavenly lord has gifted you the insect tribe evolution system. Would you like to load and bind it? Detected that the host's original self has been molded and the insect tribe's instinct is being loaded. In an instant, the queen of the ant country felt that she had recalled the time when she was still an ant. The genetic instinct and memory of hunting, reproduction, survival, and predation, the human nature that was molded was suddenly impacted. An even more instinctive impulse broke the human nature that was molded by Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. The compassionate human nature instilled by Samantabhadra Bodhisattva and the genetic insect tribe's instinct triggered by Chun Ong mixed together and molded the personality of the queen of the great locust tree country. Yes, insect tribe evolution system loading. Insect tribe evolution, kill the heavens. Activating genetic technology, bloodline template. Activating genetic technology, biochemical technology tree. Loading insectoid civilization guide. Activating genetic modification technology. Do you want to load the genetic modification biochemical furnace using the reproductive system as material? Activate. Activating job system, hive queen. First level of insect tribe technology inheritance unlocked. The queen of the great locust tree country in front of Chun Ong suddenly exploded into a pile of flesh and blood. Countless ant people swarmed over from all directions and threw themselves into the fungal carpet made of flesh and blood. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's expression suddenly changed, and the other bodhisattvas also sensed that something was wrong.